Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the stillness of that autumn afternoon, the kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. My job as a home inspector means I've seen thousands of properties, each with their own stories etched into the walls, but none quite like the Harlow house on Sycamore Lane. The Victorian-style home had stood for nearly a century in the small town of Millfield. 3 stories of faded grandeur with wraparound porches and ornate trim that had weathered decades of seasons. The young couple, the Bennetts, had purchased it for what seemed like a steal. They were excited, planning renovations, dreaming of bringing new life to old bones. "We'd like you to be thorough," Mrs. Bennett said, her voice soft but precise. The previous owner was eccentric, lived here for 50 years before passing. No family came to claim anything. I nodded, familiar with these situations. Old homes often held surprises, faulty wiring, hidden water damage, foundations slowly surrendering to time. I began my inspection methodically, clipboard in hand, moving from room to room with practiced efficiency. The master bedroom was spacious, with high ceilings and large windows that invited pools of golden afternoon light across the hardwood floors. I took measurements, noting the dimensions on my clipboard. Something didn't align with the exterior proportions. I pulled out the blueprint the Bennetts had provided, yellowed paper with pencil markings from decades earlier. That's when I noticed it, a faint rectangular outline directly above where I stood. A room. But as I turned in a slow circle, there was no access point, no staircase, no trapdoor, no visible entrance of any kind. "Did you notice this?" I asked when Mrs. Bennett came to check on my progress. I pointed to the blueprint, my finger tracing the mysterious space. She leaned closer, her brow furrowing. "No, I hadn't. That can't be right." We searched the walls together, tapping for hollow spaces, looking for seams or outlines that might suggest a hidden door. Nothing. The ceiling was smooth plaster, unblemished except for a simple light fixture at its center. "Could it be an error on the blueprint?" she asked. "Possibly," I said, but something in my gut told me otherwise. "Do you mind if I check the attic?" The main attic access was in the upstairs hallway, a pull-down ladder that creaked under my weight. The space was dusty but otherwise empty, with exposed rafters and insulation. I moved carefully across the beams, my flashlight cutting through the dim light. The attic extended over most of the house, but when I reached the area that should have been above the master bedroom, I found a wall that shouldn't have been there. It was constructed differently from the rest of the house, newer lumber, different nails. Someone had sealed off this section completely. I called down to the Bennetts, explaining what I'd found. Mr. Bennett joined me in the attic, bringing a small crowbar from his car. "This isn't original to the house," I said, running my hand along the partition. "Someone added this later." The decision to break through came easier than it should have. Professional curiosity overwhelmed protocol. Mr. Bennett worked the crowbar into a seam between 2 boards, applying steady pressure until the wood groaned and gave way. We created an opening large enough to shine the flashlight through. The beam illuminated a small room, perhaps 12 by 15 feet. Unlike the rest of the attic, this space had been finished. Drywall, painted a faded blue, covered the sloped ceiling. A twin mattress lay in one corner, stripped of bedding but bearing the indentation of a body. An old radio sat on a wooden crate beside it. And then, most disturbing of all, a small pile of clothing folded neatly at the foot of the mattress. I reached my hand through the opening, touching the fabric with hesitant fingers. The flannel shirt on top retained a faint warmth, as though its wearer had only recently departed. "That's not possible," Mr. Bennet whispered. "The house has been empty for months." We enlarged the opening and entered the hidden room together. The air inside was different, not stale as one would expect from a sealed space, but carrying the subtle scent of soap and something else I couldn't identify. A water bottle, half empty, stood beside the radio. I pressed my fingers against the plastic. It was cool to the touch. In the corner farthest from the mattress, a stack of notebooks caught my attention. I picked up the top one, opening to a random page filled with tight, meticulous handwriting. Day 1247. They still don't know I'm here. The new people make more noise than the old man did. Their voices carry through the vents. They argue about money, about renovations, about a baby they're hoping for. I've named them in my mind, Voice and Echo. Echo wants the baby more. My skin prickled as I flipped through more pages, each dated meticulously, the most recent entry from just 3 days earlier, when the old owner had been gone for months. "Call the police," I said quietly to Mr. Bennet, who stood frozen in the doorway. "Someone has been living in your walls." The investigation revealed the truth gradually, like sediment settling in still water. The previous owner, Harold Winters, had taken in a distant nephew 30 years earlier, a young man with significant mental health issues. When neighbors inquired about the nephew's sudden disappearance, Harold claimed he'd been institutionalized. But he never left. Instead, Harold had constructed this hidden room, soundproofed it, and installed a clever system of access panels disguised as electrical outlets in several rooms of the house. These small openings allowed his nephew, Martin, to move within the walls when Harold was absent or sleeping. For decades, Martin lived this shadow existence. After Harold's death, he simply continued, becoming more careful, moving only at night, collecting food from the kitchen when the house was supposed to be empty. The real estate agents who occasionally showed the property never knew they were being watched, evaluated, judged in the pages of Martin's journals. The Bennets never moved in. The house stood empty again as the investigation continued. Martin himself was never found, only his possessions, his writings, and the lingering warmth of his presence. The final journal entry, discovered later beneath the mattress, read simply, "They've seen my room. Time to find new walls." Sometimes on quiet nights, I find myself wondering about Martin, whether he found another house with enough space between its walls, whether he's watching another family, learning their patterns, becoming the ghost in their home. I think about how many houses I've inspected over the years, how many walls I've measured and assessed. And I wonder, as I lay awake in the darkness of my own bedroom, if all walls are truly as solid as they appear. Story 2. I still remember the day I first stepped into that apartment, the one where Eliza Morgan had lived. The late afternoon light filtered through Venetian blinds, casting long strips of gold across hardwood floors that creaked beneath my shoes. This was my 9th year as a detective, but something about this case settled differently on my shoulders, a weight that seemed to shift and resettle each time I thought I had my bearings. The mirror hung on the living room wall, an ornate Victorian piece with scrollwork around the edges that seemed to curl like smoke frozen in time. 6 feet tall, 3 feet wide, with a mahogany frame that had darkened with age. According to the case file open on my phone, Eliza had purchased it 3 months ago from a garage sale in Oakwood Heights. Just another decorative accent in a modestly furnished apartment. Just another ordinary object that shouldn't have been the center of a missing persons investigation. I moved closer, watching my reflection approach through a glass that had the slightest yellow tint, the kind that comes from decades of existence. My notepad felt heavy in my left hand as I studied the mirror's surface, looking for anything unusual. But all I saw was myself, the empty apartment behind me, and that persistent golden light cutting through the blinds. When did she first mention the discrepancies? I asked the landlord, who stood nervously by the door, keys jingling softly between his fingers. "About 2 months ago," he replied, his voice barely disturbing the stillness of the room. "She called about electrical issues, said the lighting in her apartment kept changing. I sent someone over, but they couldn't find anything wrong with the wiring." I nodded, making a note without looking down at my pad. My eyes remained fixed on the mirror. According to her sister, Eliza had started noticing small differences in her reflection. At first, it was subtle. The wall color behind her seemed off, more beige than the pale blue she had painted it. The bookshelf visible in the reflection contained titles arranged differently than how she had placed them. "And when did she call about the man?" I asked, my pen hovering above the paper. The landlord shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "That was 3 weeks ago. She called at midnight, hysterical. Said she'd seen someone walking behind her in the mirror, but when she turned around, nobody was there." I stepped even closer to the mirror, examining the wall behind me and its reflection. In reality, the wall was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was showing me something just slightly different, as if its reflection was off by a few degrees, revealing a space that resembled this apartment but wasn't quite the same. Eliza Morgan had been missing for 9 days now. Her phone, wallet, and keys were still in the apartment. Her car remained in its designated parking spot. No activity on her credit cards or social media accounts. It was as if she had simply vanished, leaving behind a life paused in mid-sentence. Her sister, Caroline, had been the one to file the report after Eliza missed their weekly Sunday call. She'd been acting strange for weeks, Caroline had told me, her voice hollow with worry, talking about the mirror, about how it didn't reflect things correctly. I thought she was just stressed from work, maybe needed to see someone. But then she started talking about the man. According to Caroline, Eliza had described seeing a man in the background of her mirror, never in the actual apartment, only in the reflection. At first it was just glimpses, a shadow moving past an open doorway. Then he started appearing more clearly, tall, with dark hair swept back from his forehead, wearing clothes that seemed outdated somehow, like fashion from another decade. She said he never acknowledged her, Caroline had explained during our interview, her fingers worrying the edge of her sweater. He would just move through the room behind her, going about his business as if she wasn't there, as if he was living in that space but in some other time. I reached out and touched the mirror's surface. It felt cooler than it should have in the warm apartment. Drawing my hand back slowly, I moved to examine the edges where the frame met the wall. "Did she take any medication, any history of mental health issues?" I had asked Caroline. "No, nothing like that. Eliza was the most grounded person I know. She worked in accounting. Everything in her life was organized, predictable. That's why this is so." She had trailed off, unable to find words for the strangeness of it all. I ran my fingers along the seam where the mirror met the wall, feeling for anything unusual. My reflection did the same, mimicking my movements with perfect precision. And yet something felt off. Perhaps it was just suggestion, my mind playing tricks after hearing Eliza's story. But the quality of light in the reflection seemed different than the real room, softer, more diffuse, as if coming from fixtures that weren't actually there. According to the file, the last text message Eliza had sent was to Caroline, He spoke to me today. He knows I can see him. The forensics team had found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle. Fingerprints belonged only to Eliza, her sister, the cleaning service she used monthly, and the previous owner of the mirror, an elderly woman named Margaret Perlman who had died 3 months earlier. Her children had sold off her possessions, including the mirror, at the garage sale where Eliza had purchased it. I stepped back from the mirror, watching my reflection retreat in kind. What had happened in this room? What had Eliza seen or thought she'd seen that had led to her disappearance? On a hunch, I called the department and requested information on any previous residents of Mrs. Perlman's house. While I waited for the information, I continued examining the apartment. Everything was in perfect order. Dishes washed and put away, bed made, not even a stray piece of mail out of place. The only anomaly was a single chair positioned directly in front of the mirror, as if Eliza had spent time simply sitting and watching the reflection. My phone buzzed with an incoming message from the department. Margaret Perlman had lived in her home for 46 years. Before her, the house had belonged to a man named Richard Davenport, who had lived there from 1952 to 1979. The attached photo showed a tall man with dark hair swept back from his forehead. I looked up from my phone to the mirror again, a chill running along my spine despite the warmth of the apartment. Slowly, deliberately, I walked toward the mirror and stood directly in front of it, studying my reflection and the room behind me. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just my reflection, the empty apartment, the strips of late afternoon sunlight. Then the light in the reflection shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that anyone casually glancing would notice, but the quality changed, becoming softer, more diffuse. And the wall behind me in the reflection wasn't the pale blue it was in reality, but a subtle beige tone. I remained perfectly still, my breath shallow in my chest. And then, in the reflection, a door opened in the background, a door that didn't exist in Eliza's actual apartment. A tall figure moved into view, a man with dark hair swept back from his forehead. He moved with purpose, crossing the room without looking in my direction, completely unaware of my presence. In the real apartment behind me, there was nothing, just empty space and silence. But in the mirror, he was there, moving through a room that looked like this one but wasn't quite the same. Richard Davenport, dead since 1979. My heart pounded as I watched him move through the reflected room, straightening items on a desk that didn't exist in Eliza's apartment. Then suddenly he stopped. Slowly he turned his head, looking directly at the mirror, directly at me. Our eyes met across an impossible divide, and I saw recognition dawn on his face. His lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. He took a step toward the mirror, his hand outstretched. I backed away quickly, my notebook falling to the floor. In the reflection, he continued moving forward, his hand reaching toward the glass. I kept backing up until I hit the opposite wall, my eyes never leaving the mirror. In the reflection, Richard Davenport stood directly in front of the glass now, his palm pressed flat against the surface from his side. His lips moved again, forming words that looked like, "Help me." I fumbled for my phone with trembling hands, trying to take a photo to document what I was seeing. But when I looked at the screen, it showed only my reflection in a normal mirror, in a normal empty apartment. When I looked up again, Richard Davenport was gone. The reflection showed only the apartment as it really was, pale blue walls, empty space, strips of sunlight through the blinds. But on the surface of the mirror, visible only from certain angles in the light, was what appeared to be a handprint, as if someone had pressed their palm against the glass from the other side. 3 days later, we found Eliza Morgan's wallet and phone in Margaret Perlman's old house, now vacant and up for sale. They were in a room that matched the dimensions of Eliza's apartment, in a space where a mirror might have once hung. But of Eliza herself, we found no trace. The mirror remains in evident storage now, covered with a cloth. Sometimes, late at night when the building is quiet, the officers on duty report hearing sounds from that room, like fingers tapping gently on glass, trying to get someone's attention. I haven't looked in that mirror again, but sometimes when I pass reflective surfaces, windows, still water, the glossy screen of my phone, I find myself checking the background carefully, looking for rooms that shouldn't be there or people moving in spaces that should be empty. And I wonder about Eliza Morgan and whether she's trying to get back or if she's still watching through the glass, seeing a world she can no longer reach. Story 3. I still remember the texture of the case file under my fingertips, slightly worn at the edges, as if countless hands before mine had traced the same path through this mystery. The Jensen case, they called it, a curious anomaly in my otherwise predictable career as a detective in the quiet town of Lakewood. The kind of case that stays with you not because of its brutality, but because of the questions it leaves lingering in the spaces between what we know and what we can only sense. It began on a Tuesday evening in late October, when the air carries that particular chill that makes you turn your collar up against the wind. Elinor Jensen, 42, a research librarian who lived alone in a modest craftsman on Maple Street, had called the station in a state I can only describe as controlled terror. Her voice, as I later heard on the recording, maintained an unnatural steadiness that spoke volumes about her effort to remain composed. "Something isn't right," she had told the dispatcher. My phone rang, and before I could answer it, someone else did from inside my house. The dispatch officer had taken the details with professional detachment, but when the file crossed my desk the next morning, something about it caught my attention. Perhaps it was the precision with which Elinor had reported the incident, or maybe it was simply the unusual nature of the complaint itself. Either way, I found myself driving to Maple Street before noon, the file riding shotgun beside me. Elinor's house stood slightly apart from its neighbors, shadowed by 2 ancient oak trees that had likely been there before the foundation was laid. The porch steps creaked underfoot as I approached, the sound mingling with the distant rumble of a lawnmower from somewhere down the block. When Elinor opened the door, her eyes met mine with a peculiar mix of relief and apprehension. "Detective Harmon," I introduced myself, showing my badge. "I'm here about your call." Her living room was meticulously organized, bookshelves lined with volumes arranged by subject and author. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and old paper. She offered me tea, which I accepted more as a courtesy than from thirst. As the kettle whistled in the kitchen, I noticed the landline phone sitting on a small table near the window, its black plastic surface reflecting the afternoon light. "It happened right there," she said, returning with 2 steaming mugs. Her hands were steady now, but I noticed how she kept her distance from the telephone as if it might suddenly spring to life. I was reading when it rang just once, and then before I could get to it, I heard the click of someone answering. She paused, taking a careful sip from her mug before continuing, and then I heard my own voice. It wasn't a recording, it was me, but not me. It whispered, "Stop looking," just that. Then the line went dead. Her eyes drifted toward the phone. It hasn't worked since. I asked the usual questions. Had she heard anyone in the house? Were there signs of a break-in? None. Did she have enemies, or was she involved in anything that might prompt threats? She shook her head at each inquiry. There is one thing, she added after a moment's hesitation. I've been researching the old Blackwood estate for the library archives. There's been some controversy about its demolition. Nothing serious, just local history debates. I made a note, though it seemed tenuous at best. Then I examined the phone. True to her word, it was completely dead. No dial tone, no static, nothing. I checked the connection, which appeared intact. Alina watched me with the quiet intensity of someone who needs validation that they haven't imagined the impossible. Over the next few days, I conducted what would become an increasingly peculiar investigation. The phone company confirmed the line had experienced an unusual power surge at exactly 8:17 p.m. on the night in question. Their technician, a woman named Mara with 30 years of experience, told me she'd never seen anything quite like it. It's as if something overloaded the circuit from inside the house, she explained, tapping her pen against her clipboard. But there's no earthly reason why that should have happened. I interviewed neighbors who reported nothing unusual except for Mr. Finch across the street, who mentioned seeing a car he didn't recognize parked down the block. Dark sedan, he said, squinting as if trying to recall details from a dream. Couldn't make out the plates. It was there, then it wasn't. Not much to go on. The library yielded more interesting information. Alina's research on the Blackwood estate had led her to uncover documents suggesting the original owner, Howard Blackwood, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1962, shortly after installing one of the town's first private telephone lines. His body was never found, but blood stains on his study floor led police to declare it a homicide. The case was never solved. What connected this 60-year-old cold case to Alina's experience remained unclear, but as I sat in my office late one evening, the lamplight casting long shadows across my desk, I found myself tracing the connections with increasing unease. The Blackwood estate had been built on what was now Maple Street. In fact, Alina's house stood almost exactly where Howard's study had once been. On the 7th day of my investigation, Alina called me directly, not from her home phone, which remained lifeless, but from her office at the library. I found something, she said without preamble, in Howard Blackwood's personal correspondence. He wrote to his sister about hearing voices on his new telephone line, voices that shouldn't have been there. I drove to the library immediately. Alina was waiting for me in the archive room, a space of hushed reverence and the distinctive scent of aging paper. On the table before her lay a letter, the handwriting elegant but hurried. "The telephone seems to connect to somewhere else," Howard had written. "Not to any number I've dialed. Someone is using it as a conduit. I hear whispers when no one should be on the line. Always the same message. Stop looking. I fear my research has uncovered something never meant to be found." The letter was dated 3 days before his disappearance. Alina and I spent hours combing through Howard's research notes. He had been investigating local land rights, particularly concerning a parcel of land that had once belonged to a small religious community that had abandoned the area abruptly in the late 1800s. According to town records, the community had left after a series of unexplained deaths. As evening descended, Alina suddenly stood up, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. "I should go home," she said, though her expression suggested that was the last thing she wanted to do. "I'll drive you," I offered. The concern in my voice was professional, I told myself, though I knew it had become something more personal. Alina's house was dark when we arrived, the porch light either burned out or never turned on. I followed her inside, my hand instinctively resting near my holster as we moved through the silent rooms. Everything was as she had left it that morning. In the living room, the dead telephone sat like a silent sentinel. "Would you like me to stay for a while?" I asked. Alina nodded, the relief evident in her eyes. We sat in the kitchen, talking about inconsequential things, deliberately avoiding the subject that had brought us together. It was nearly midnight when we heard it, a sound so unexpected that at first I wasn't sure what it was. The telephone was ringing. We moved to the living room slowly, as if in a dream. The black phone on the table was vibrating slightly with each ring. Elena looked at me, her face pale in the dim light. "Don't answer it," I said, but we both knew she would. Her hand trembled as she lifted the receiver. She didn't speak, just listened. I watched as her expression shifted from fear to confusion, and then to a strange sort of recognition. When she finally lowered the phone, she turned to me with eyes that seemed to look through me rather than at me. "It was Howard Blackwood," she whispered. "He says he's been trying to warn us. The land, it doesn't want to be disturbed. The community didn't leave. They're still there beneath the foundations." I took the phone from her hand gently and placed it against my ear. There was no dial tone, no sound at all. Just as before, the line was dead. The Blackwood estate demolition was quietly canceled the following week. The official reason cited structural concerns and historical preservation interests. Elena transferred to a library branch in another town, and I rarely saw her after that, though we occasionally exchanged letters, never calls. As for me, I requested a transfer from the Lakewood Police Department shortly after closing the Jensen case as unresolved. Some mysteries, I've come to believe, are better left that way. Some voices are not meant to be answered. But on quiet nights, when the wind whispers through the trees outside my window, I sometimes catch myself glancing at my own telephone with a sense of anticipation, or perhaps dread. Waiting for it to ring, waiting to hear the voice that shouldn't be there, waiting for the message meant for those who look too deeply into the shadows where past and present blur. Stop looking. And I wonder as I drift towards sleep, whose voice would answer if I were to call that abandoned number on Maple Street. Would it be Elena's, Howard's, or perhaps, most terrifying of all, would it be my own? Story 4, it was hidden under a loose floorboard, a leather-bound journal with dozens of entries. The writing described everything she'd done since moving in, word for word, but the last page didn't describe her past. It detailed what she was about to do next. I remember the weight of that journal in my hands, the smooth texture of worn leather against my fingertips. The pages made a soft, whispering sound as I turned them, like secrets being shared in confidence. I was sitting in Rebecca Harmon's apartment, the afternoon light filtering through dusty Venetian blinds, creating stripes of gold across the hardwood floor. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and old books, a comforting scent that belied the unsettling nature of what I'd found. "I'm Detective Morgan Reeves. I've been investigating disappearances for 15 years, but nothing prepared me for this case. Rebecca Harmon, 28, kindergarten teacher, vanished without a trace 3 days ago. No signs of struggle, no suspicious bank activity, no unusual communication patterns in the days leading up to her disappearance. Just gone. Her sister called it in when Rebecca missed their weekly Sunday brunch, something she had never done without advance notice. She's reliable, the sister told me, voice trembling slightly over the phone. If she says she'll be somewhere, she's there. Something's wrong. The apartment was just as Rebecca had left it, coffee mug in the sink, bed neatly made, a novel on the nightstand with a bookmark about halfway through. It was the kind of scene I'd walked into dozens of times before, the suspended animation of a life suddenly interrupted. I wouldn't have found the journal if not for the cat, a gray tabby named Fitzgerald who kept pawing at a specific spot in the living room floor. At first I thought it might be a mouse. That's when I noticed the edge of one floorboard was slightly higher than the others. The wood was lighter there, less worn by years of footsteps. The journal was wrapped in a plastic bag protected from potential moisture. Careful, deliberate, not something you'd do if you were hiding it in a hurry. The entries began 3 months ago, coinciding with Rebecca's move into the apartment. First night in the new place, it read, ordered Thai food. Pad Thai was disappointing, too sweet. Spent 2 hours arranging books on the shelf by color instead of unpacking the kitchen. I flipped to the next page, set up the coffee maker, spent 20 minutes figuring out the timer function, called Mom to tell her about the apartment. She's worried about the neighborhood but trying not to show it. These weren't Rebecca's words. This was someone describing Rebecca's actions, someone watching her. I felt a chill run through me despite the warmth of the afternoon. My breathing slowed as I turned page after page, each one chronicling daily routines, conversations, private moments that no one should have known about. The handwriting was neat, almost mechanical, no emotional flourishes, just the methodical recording of observed facts. She talks to herself when she cooks, one entry noted. Always the same pattern, a little hum, then a whispered "let's see" before opening the refrigerator. How could anyone know this? The apartment was on the 3rd floor, windows facing the street and a brick wall. No adjacent buildings offered a view inside. No cameras were found during our sweep. The lock on her door was intact, the security system armed and functioning. I paged through carefully, looking for any clue to the observer's identity. Nothing, no personal reflections, no I statements, just Rebecca's life, catalogued day after day with unsettling precision. Then came the final entry, dated the day before she disappeared. Tomorrow she will wake at 6:15. She will make coffee, forget to eat breakfast. At work she will receive flowers from a secret admirer. This will make her uncomfortable. She will leave them in the teacher's lounge. After school, she will go to the bookstore on Maple Street. She will browse for 23 minutes. She will buy nothing. At 5:47, she will begin walking home. She will take the path through Wilson Park. She will not take the main trail. She will choose the winding path by the pond. She will pause at the wooden bridge. She will notice something in the water. She will lean over to look closer. She will lose her balance. The entry ended there. I closed the journal slowly, the final words hanging in the air like smoke. My fingers tingled with numbness. I called in the Discovery immediately, requesting a search team for Wilson Park, focusing on the pond area. The crime scene unit arrived within the hour to collect the journal. They found no fingerprints except Rebecca's on the floorboard and the plastic bag. The journal itself had been wiped clean. As twilight approached, I stood at the edge of Wilson Park Pond, watching the search team wade through the dark water. Their flashlights created eerie, dancing patterns on the surface. A light rain had begun to fall, creating tiny ripples that expanded outward in perfect concentric circles. "Detective Reeves," a voice called from the wooden bridge. One of the divers was holding something up, a shoe, women's size 7, the same size Rebecca wore. By morning, they had recovered her body from the shallow water beneath the bridge. The medical examiner would later confirm what the journal had implied: a fall, head trauma, drowning, the perfect accident. But it wasn't an accident. The journal made that clear. Someone had planned this. Someone had watched Rebecca for months, learning her patterns, her habits, her tendencies. Someone had predicted or orchestrated her every move leading to that moment on the bridge. I returned to her apartment the next day, standing in the center of the living room, turning slowly, examining every corner, every potential hiding spot. How had they watched her? Where had they hidden? The answer came 3 days later in the form of a maintenance request filed by the previous tenant. 6 months ago, the apartment had been renovated. New fixtures, new paint, new floors laid over the old ones. The contractor's name was Daniel Mercer. His background check showed nothing unusual, no criminal record, good references, 10 years with the same company. But when we tracked him down, he was gone. Apartment emptied, phone disconnected, bank accounts closed. We found his workshop in an industrial area outside the city. Empty, except for a single item left in the center of the floor, another leather-bound journal. The first page contained only one sentence: "You're reading this because you found the first one." I opened to the middle, my heart pounding against my ribs. There it was, my life, my routines, my private moments, descriptions of me sitting alone in my apartment, reading case files, notes about which takeout I ordered, observations about how I talk to myself when I think no one is listening. The last entry was dated tomorrow. I haven't read it. I can't bring myself to look at those pages, to see what someone thinks or knows will happen to me. The journal sits in an evidence bag on my desk as I write this report. The search for Daniel Mercer continues. We've discovered he renovated 12 apartments in the last year. We've located 9 of the current residents. 3 remain missing. In each occupied apartment, we found the same thing: a loose floorboard, and beneath it, a journal. Some nights I lie awake wondering how he did it. Hidden cameras, microphones, something more sophisticated, or something much simpler that we're all overlooking. More than that, I wonder why. What compels someone to watch, to record, to predict? I've requested protection for the remaining residents we've identified. As for me, I've checked every inch of my apartment, removed floorboards, examined vents, searched for anything that might be watching. I still feel eyes on me, still hear phantom scratching sounds like a pen moving across paper, recording my every move. The journal that predicted her sits in our evidence locker now. The one that predicts me stays with me unopened. Sometimes I think about reading that final entry, about knowing what comes next. But some mysteries are better left unsolved, some futures better left unread. At least that's what I tell myself as I fall asleep each night, listening for the sound of writing in the dark. Story 5. The package was small and carefully wrapped. Inside, a baby shoe, a cracked pacifier, and a note: "You left something behind." There were no fingerprints, no postage, but her name was written in a handwriting she hadn't seen since childhood. I remember the first time Detective Cassandra Wells brought the parcel to my attention. The office was quiet that afternoon, just the gentle hum of the air conditioner and the occasional distant ringing of phones from the bullpen. Rain tapped against the windows with a rhythm that almost matched the soft click of her ballpoint pen against the wooden desk. "Something about this doesn't sit right," she said, her voice calm but tense around the edges. The parcel sat between us, innocuous in its brown paper wrapping. What made it unusual wasn't its appearance, but the circumstances of its arrival. It had been left on Sarah Keller's doorstep on a Tuesday morning. No delivery person caught on her doorbell camera. No vehicle spotted on the street cameras nearby. The parcel had simply materialized as if placed by a ghost. I lifted the baby's shoe from the evidence bag, feeling its negligible weight in my palm. It was pale blue, hardly worn, the kind purchased for infants who haven't yet taken their first steps. The pacifier beside it bore teeth marks, a hairline crack running through its plastic shield. Sarah Keller has no children, I noted, my fingertip tracing the edge of the pacifier without touching it directly. Not according to any records we can find, Cassandra confirmed, her eyes never leaving the note. You left something behind. The handwriting analysis had come back earlier that morning. Wide, looping letters with sharp upstrokes, the handwriting of someone who had learned to write in the 1950s or 60s, someone who had been taught a specific cursive method that schools no longer used. Sarah had confirmed what the lab suggested. The handwriting belonged to her mother who had passed away 17 years ago. We drove to Sarah's house as the afternoon light began to soften. Her neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined streets with houses set back from the road. Nothing about it suggested danger or secrets, the kind of place where people moved to forget. Sarah answered the door on the second knock. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail and the kind of pallor that comes from several sleepless nights. Her hands trembled slightly as she invited us in. "Have you remembered anything else?" I asked as we settled in her living room. Everything was neat, organized, a place for everything and everything in its place. No photos adorned the walls or shelves, no mementos. It was a home that could be packed up and left behind with minimal effort. "I've been trying," she said, her voice soft. "I keep thinking about my mother's handwriting, how it could be possible." I nodded, letting the silence stretch between us. In my experience, silence often excavates truth more effectively than questioning. "There was a summer," she finally continued, "when I was 16. My mother sent me to stay with my aunt in Oregon. She said it was to help with my cousin's new baby, but..." Her voice trailed off as she stared at something beyond the window. The afternoon had begun to darken, shadows lengthening across her hardwood floor. "I was sick a lot before I left. I gained weight. My mother was so angry with me that whole spring." The implications settled between us like dust. "You think you were pregnant," Cassandra stated simply, no judgment in her voice. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember. That's the thing that's been keeping me awake. I don't remember those months clearly. It's like there's a fog. I remember being sick. I remember my mother's disappointment, and then I was at my aunt's. When I came back 3 months later, we never spoke of it again." I've investigated many cases over my 20-year career, but there's something uniquely unsettling about a person unable to access their own history. Memory is fragile, easily manipulated, especially when trauma is involved. We spent the next week quietly excavating Sarah's past. Her aunt had passed away 5 years ago. Medical records from that period were sparse. A small-town doctor who had retired and whose paper files had been destroyed in a storage facility fire. Convenient, perhaps too convenient. The DNA analysis of the pacifier came back on a Thursday. The genetic material matched Sarah's, but there was more, another profile, partial but distinct. Someone related to her. The baby's shoe yielded nothing useful, but inside, faded by time but still visible, was a name written in marker: Jamie. I stood in the evidence room late that night, the single overhead light casting strange shadows as I laid out each item from the parcel. The shoe, the pacifier, the note, 3 objects that had upended a woman's understanding of her own life. Who was Jamie, a child Sarah had been made to forget, or perhaps never knew existed? The case took us to Oregon the following week. The small town where Sarah's aunt had lived was largely unchanged, the kind of place that resists time rather than embraces it. The house still stood, now occupied by a young family with two small children. Their toys dotted the front yard, colorful plastic against the green grass. The local cemetery yielded no answers, no small graves with the name Jamie. The church records showed no baptism. It was as if the child had never existed or had disappeared into a system designed to hide such secrets. It was the county hospital archives that finally offered a thread to pull. A birth certificate from 25 years ago, mother's name redacted but with a case number that matched a Jane Doe admission. A baby boy, 6 pounds 4 ounces. Name listed, James, no father recorded. The adoption records were sealed, but not all paper trails can be completely erased. A social worker from that period, now in her 70s, remembered the case over tea in her small apartment. The mother was young, just a girl really, she told us, her arthritic fingers tapping against her mug. Her family arranged everything before the birth, very hush-hush, the kind of thing that happened more often than people like to admit. The baby went to a couple from Washington State. I felt a chill despite the warmth of the day. Do you remember their names? Confidential, she said automatically, years of professional discretion hardwired into her response. Then she paused, considering. But I remember they divorced about 5 years later. The father kept the boy. Name was Lowell, I think, Richard Lowell. Back in our jurisdiction, the search narrowed. Richard Lowell had moved multiple times but had settled in a city just 30 miles from Sarah Keller. A coincidence, perhaps, or something more deliberate. His son, James Lowell, was 25 now, working as a nurse at the very hospital where Sarah had undergone surgery last year. The pieces assembled themselves like a puzzle whose image was both expected and shocking. A young nurse who notices a patient's name and birth date, who perhaps sees a resemblance or simply follows a hunch, who researches and discovers the woman who gave birth to him and then gave him away, who leaves a package as a silent accusation or a plea for recognition. When we finally located James Lowell, he didn't deny sending the package. He sat across from us in the interview room, his posture perfect, his face composed but eyes burning with an intensity that spoke of years of questions. I just wanted her to know that I exist, he said quietly, that I wasn't just something to be left behind. We explained the complicated reality, a teenager who may have been made to forget, whose pregnancy may have been hidden from her own consciousness through family manipulation and societal shame. A mother who might never have been given a choice. Sarah and James met on a Sunday. I wasn't present for their conversation, but Cassandra observed from a respectful distance. She said they sat across from each other in a coffee shop, two strangers connected by blood and separated by circumstances neither had controlled. They talked for 3 hours. The case file was closed as a non-criminal matter, though the methods used to obtain the materials in the package remained technically a violation of medical ethics and privacy laws. Sometimes justice and closure exist in different realms. I think about them sometimes, Sarah and the son she never knew she had. I wonder what truths they've uncovered together, what memories have returned to her in the presence of this adult who once was part of her. I wonder if the handwriting on the note was truly her mother's, perhaps from some old document James had discovered, or a clever forgery designed to cut through the fog of forgetting. Some mysteries solve themselves only to reveal deeper enigmas beneath. Some parcels, once opened, can never truly be closed again. Story 6. I still remember the first time I stepped onto that dirt path, how the soil felt unusually soft beneath my boots as if it had been recently disturbed. The locals at the wooden cabins had exchanged knowing glances when I'd asked about hiking trails. There's plenty of marked paths in the state park, the rental office manager had said, her weathered fingers tapping nervously on the counter. No need to go exploring behind the cabins. But I've always been drawn to places others avoid. It's why I became an investigative journalist in the first place, that persistent pull toward the shadows where others won't look. So when I noticed the barely visible trail disappearing into the thick pines behind cabin number 7, I felt that familiar tug of curiosity. The light changed as I walked deeper into the forest that afternoon. Not suddenly, but with such gradual subtlety that I only noticed when I turned back to see how far I'd come. The entrance to the trail was now just a suggestion of brightness between the trees, like a distant memory rather than a physical place. The air grew heavier, carrying the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic. I should have turned back, that's what I tell myself now in the quiet hours when sleep won't come. I should have listened to the strange silence of those woods, no birdsong, no rustling of small creatures in the underbrush, just the soft crunch of pine needles under my feet and my own breathing, which seemed to grow louder with each step forward. The trail narrowed, winding between trees that stood unnaturally close together. Their trunks were marked with strange symbols carved deep into the bark, not fresh, but worn smooth at the edges as if they'd been there for decades. I ran my fingers across one that resembled an hourglass. The wood felt warm to the touch, almost feverish. That's when I saw it, a woman's hiking boot, tan with red laces, nailed to a pine tree at eye level. Not thrown there or abandoned, but deliberately fastened to the trunk with a rusted railroad spike driven through its center. Below it, nestled in the exposed roots of the tree, lay a wallet made of worn brown leather. Something cold slithered down my spine as I picked it up, the material tacky against my fingertips. It fell open naturally to reveal a driver's license in the front pocket. The face that stared back at me from the ID photo made my breath catch in my throat. She looked exactly like me, same hazel eyes, same small scar above the left eyebrow from a childhood fall, same asymmetrical smile. Only the name was different, Eliza Morgan instead of Anna Wells. I studied her birth date, August 17, 1989, 3 days after my own. My hands trembled as I explored the wallet's contents, credit cards in Eliza's name, a folded receipt from a gas station in town dated 3 weeks earlier, a small photograph of an older couple I didn't recognize, though the woman had my mother's chin, and a handwritten note on lined paper that simply read, "The forest gives back what it takes, but never in the same form." I should have left immediately, run back to the cabins, and called the police. Instead, I continued forward, pulled by something I couldn't name, a terrible gravity that seemed to emanate from the deepest part of the woods. The path grew narrower still, barely wide enough for my shoulders, the branches reaching out to tug at my clothes like pleading hands. Another 100 yards and I found a second shoe nailed to another tree. This one matched the first. Beneath it lay a phone in a red case, cracked but still operational when I pressed the power button. The lock screen showed a familiar face, my face, smiling next to a black Labrador I'd never seen before. The timestamp read 9:17 a.m. May 4th, 2 days before I'd arrived at the cabins. Detective Morris didn't believe me when I finally made it back and reported what I'd found. His pen moved methodically across his notepad as I spoke, but his eyes remained flat, unimpressed. "So you're telling me there's a woman who looks exactly like you who disappeared in these woods," he summarized, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "And you found her belongings nailed to trees." "I can show you," I insisted. "The path starts just behind cabin 7. The detective sighed, closed his notebook. "Ms. Wells, I've lived in this county for 43 years. I know every inch of these woods. There is no path behind cabin 7. But there was. I had walked it myself just hours before. I had touched the nailed boot, held the wallet, seen my own face staring back at me from unfamiliar identification. The next morning I returned to the spot where the trail had begun. Morris was right. There was nothing there but dense underbrush and towering pines. No opening, no path, no way through. I pushed at the branches until my arms were scratched and bleeding, but the forest remained impenetrable. That afternoon I drove into town and visited the local library. The archivist, an elderly man with glasses thick as bottle bottoms, helped me search through old newspapers. It took 3 hours to find what I was looking for, a small article from 1991 about a missing hiker named Catherine Davis, last seen entering the woods behind the old cabin site. The grainy photograph showed a young woman with my face. I found 7 more over the decades, different names, different years, but always the same face, my face, always the same message from witnesses. She had ventured onto a path that shouldn't have existed. I've been staying at cabin 7 for 6 weeks now. The rental manager stopped asking when I'm leaving. Each morning I check for the path. Each evening I review my notes on the women who disappeared. The locals avoid me. Sometimes I catch them watching me through windows or from across the street, their expressions a mixture of pity and fear. Last night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard soft footsteps on my porch. When I opened the door, I found my own wallet placed neatly on the welcome mat. Inside was everything exactly as it should be: my driver's license, my credit cards, my insurance information, except for a small slip of paper I didn't recognize. On it, in handwriting identical to my own, were the words, "The path appears differently to each of us. Wait for the new moon." Tonight is the new moon. From my window I can see something shifting in the darkness behind the cabin. A space opening where there was none before. A path emerging from solid forest. I know I shouldn't go, but I also know I will, because the forest has been calling me by many names for longer than I've been alive, and because deep down I've always suspected there was only one way out of this life and into understanding. The path is waiting, and this time I think I'm finally ready to walk it to its end. Story 7, the knob turned normally. Nothing strange, but one night it clicked shut and wouldn't reopen. From the outside it looked perfectly fine. From inside she heard a child's voice whispering, "I don't want to go back in the wall." I remember the first time I walked into the Mercer house. The floorboards creaked under my shoes, releasing the scent of old wood and bygone decades. It was winter, and the pale afternoon light filtered through dusty windows, casting long shadows across the Victorian home. As a detective with 15 years on the force, I'd visited countless crime scenes, but something about this one felt different from the beginning. Not more violent or disturbing, just different. The call had come in on a Tuesday. A woman named Alina Mercer claimed something strange was happening in her home. Specifically with a closet on the second floor. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't warrant police attention, but Alina's trembling voice and the unexpected death of her husband 3 months prior prompted my supervisor to assign me to check on her. "I keep hearing things," she had told the dispatcher, "and the door, it locks from inside when nobody's in there." The house stood at the end of Willow Lane, partially hidden by overgrown hedges that hadn't been trimmed in what looked like years. It was one of those grand old houses that had once been the pride of the neighborhood, now faded into a quiet dignity that verged on neglect. 3 stories of weathered brick and ornate woodwork, with a widow's walk that overlooked the small town of Millfield. Alina Mercer met me at the door. She was in her late 60s, with silver hair pulled back into a loose bun, and eyes that carried a particular kind of weariness I've come to recognize in people who live with unrelenting fear. Her hands fidgeted with the edge of her cardigan as she led me inside. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the gentle tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. "I know how it sounds, a closet that locks itself," but after Harold passed, she trailed off, looking toward the staircase. I followed her up the creaking steps, noting the family photographs that lined the wall. Alina and who I presumed was Harold in younger days. A child, a daughter perhaps, in various stages of growing up. The most recent photos appeared to be at least 20 years old. The second-floor hallway stretched before us, lined with closed doors on either side. At the far end, beneath a small round window, stood the closet in question. It looked unremarkable, a simple wooden door with an old brass knob, painted white like everything else in the hallway. "It was Harold's father who built this house," Alina explained as we approached the closet. "Back in 1907. The closet was added later in the 1930s when they converted part of the original nursery." I nodded, noting the slight difference in the doorframe compared to the others. It was narrower, with molding that didn't quite match the rest of the hallway. "When did you first notice something unusual?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral as I examined the door. Alina's fingers traced invisible patterns on her sleeve. 3 weeks after the funeral, I heard clicking sounds, like someone turning the knob, but from inside. At first I thought it might be the house settling, but then... She hesitated, eyes darting toward the closet, and then away again. "Then I started finding it locked from the inside. There's no key for it, detective. The mechanism is simple, just a small latch that can only be turned from within, and yet somehow it keeps locking itself." I took out my small notebook and jotted down some observations. The doorknob was cool to the touch, a standard fixture from the early 20th century, nothing remarkable about it. "And you mentioned hearing things," I prompted gently. The tension in Alina's shoulders became more pronounced. "A child's voice," she whispered. "Always the same thing. I don't want to go back in the wall. Sometimes it's so faint I think I'm imagining it. Other times..." As if on cue, a soft click came from behind the closet door. Alina froze beside me, her breathing shallow. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the sound." I reached for the knob and turned it. As Alina had described, it wouldn't open. Something on the other side was holding it closed. "Do you have any tools, a screwdriver perhaps?" I asked. 20 minutes later, after removing the doorknob and its mechanism, I carefully pushed the door open. The closet was small and empty except for a few coat hangers and an old hat box on the shelf above. No child, no person, nothing that could have turned the latch. But as I stepped inside with my flashlight, I noticed something unusual about the back wall. Unlike the solid plaster of the side walls, this one had a different texture, newer drywall that had been painted to match. I tapped it lightly with my knuckles, listening to the hollow sound that echoed back. "Alina, do you know if any renovations were done to this closet?" She shook her head. "Not since we've owned the house. Harold's parents lived here before us, and they never mentioned anything. I ran my fingers along the edges of the wall, feeling for inconsistencies. Near the bottom right corner, the flashlight beam caught a slight discoloration, a faint brownish stain seeping through the paint. "I'm going to need to look behind this wall," I said quietly. The local historical society had records of the Mercer house, including the original blueprint from 1907 and documentation of renovations in 1935. The nursery conversion was indeed recorded, but there was something else, a small note in the margin of the 1935 plans, enclosure of secondary stairwell per owner request. I returned to the house the next day with a building inspector and the necessary permits. Alina watched anxiously as we carefully cut into the drywall at the back of the closet. The hollow space behind was exactly as the historical records had indicated, a narrow stairwell that had once connected the second floor to the servants' quarters above. But that wasn't all we found. Pressed between the old stairs and the newer wall, preserved in the cool, dry space, were the remains of a child. Based on the size of the bones and the few artifacts found, a small button, the remnants of what had once been a dress, our medical examiner estimated it was a girl, approximately 7 years old, who had died sometime in the 1930s. The subsequent investigation revealed that Harold Mercer's father had employed a housekeeper with a young daughter named Lucy from 1932 to 1935. According to town records, both the housekeeper and her daughter had supposedly moved away without notice. No forwarding address was ever filed. 2 weeks later, construction began on converting the nursery and enclosing the secondary stairwell. The case remains officially open, though with all potential witnesses long deceased, it's unlikely we'll ever know the full truth. Alina Mercer sold the house shortly after our discovery and moved to be closer to her daughter in another state. As for the closet that locked from inside, the new owners had it removed entirely, opening up the stairwell and restoring that part of the house to its original design. They claim to have never heard any unusual sounds. But sometimes when I drive past that house on quiet evenings, I find myself thinking about little Lucy, trapped between worlds for nearly 90 years, and her whispered plea, "I don't want to go back in the wall." And I wonder if silence is truly the same as peace. Story 8. I remember the steady rhythm of water droplets hitting the metal basin, each one creating tiny ripples across the shallow puddle forming below. It was late October, the kind of autumn evening where darkness falls earlier than you expect, and the shadows in unfamiliar rooms seem to hold secrets. I had been in the house just 3 weeks, my first real home purchase after years of renting apartments that never quite felt like mine. The leak started slowly, first just a dampness under the sink cabinet, then a persistent drip that echoed throughout the quiet kitchen at night. When the plumber finally arrived, his weathered hands worked methodically, loosening the curved pipe beneath the sink with practiced movements. Neither of us was prepared for what happened next. "Ma'am, there's something stuck in here," he said, his voice low and curious rather than alarmed. As he disconnected the final section of pipe, a small cascade of water spilled out, carrying with it several soggy, discolored rectangles. Photographs curled at the edges, their images blurred but still discernible. I knelt beside him on the kitchen floor, the cold tile pressing against my knees as I carefully gathered the wet prints. 7 in total. 7 different people, men and women of varying ages, each standing in front of a house. My house. The same porch steps, the same red door with its distinctive brass knocker, the same bay window to the left. "Previous owners, maybe," the plumber suggested. but something in his tone suggested he didn't believe that any more than I did. "I researched the property history before buying," I replied, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "There were only 2 previous owners since it was built in 1967. I paid the plumber and thanked him, laying the photographs across paper towels on my dining room table to dry. Each face stared back at me. Strangers who had posed before my home yet, according to county records, had never owned it, never lived here. The photos appeared to span decades, the clothing styles and photographic quality shifting from what looked like the early 1970s through to perhaps the early 2000s. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked and settled around me in ways I hadn't noticed before. I found myself standing at my bedroom window at 3 in the morning, looking down at the front yard, comparing the view to those frozen moments in the photographs. The next day I called the real estate agent who had handled my purchase. Her voice brightened when she recognized mine, then developed a slight edge when I mentioned the photographs. "Old houses have their quirks," she said, a little too quickly. "Previous owners often leave things behind." "But these people never owned the house," I countered softly. "I checked the records." A pause just a beat too long. Records can be incomplete sometimes. I spent the following weekend scanning the photographs and enhancing them as best I could with my limited technical skills. Details emerged: a watch on one man's wrist, a distinctive necklace worn by one of the women, a university sweatshirt on the youngest subject. The local library's newspaper archives became my second home. Day after day, I scrolled through microfiche records, searching faces, names, any connection to my address. The librarian, an older woman named Margaret with silver-rimmed glasses and a voice like smooth stones, began saving me a seat near the archives room. "Looking for ghosts?" she asked one afternoon, setting a cup of tea beside my notepad. When I looked up in surprise, she smiled. "That house on Maple Street has quite a history." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" Margaret sat down across from me, her eyes searching mine before she spoke. "I've lived in this town my whole life. That house, your house, doesn't keep its owners long. The property records only show 2 previous owners," I said. "Property records show legal owners," she replied carefully. "Not everyone who lived there had their name on a deed." It took 3 more weeks of careful research before the pattern emerged. 7 missing persons cases spanning 40 years. 7 people who had disappeared without a trace. Their last known locations varied: a grocery store parking lot, a highway rest stop, a community college campus. Nothing connected them except for the photographs in my pipes. I found Martin Green first, the man in the earliest photograph, wearing a tweed jacket and standing stiffly before my porch steps. Reported missing in 1972, last seen leaving his teaching job at the community college. The newspaper quoted his wife: "He just vanished between his office and the parking lot." Then Rebecca Torres, the woman with the distinctive turquoise necklace, missing since 1986 after dropping her children at school. The photograph of her in front of my house showed her wearing the same dress described in the missing person report. One by one, I connected the photographs to the missing. One by one, I realized these people had been brought to my house, by whom or for what purpose remained unclear. The previous owner, a widow named Alina Chambers, had died 6 months before I purchased the property. Her husband, Gerald, had died 10 years earlier. They had bought the house in 1969 from the original owners, the Blackwood family who had built it. I found myself standing in front of Alina's sister's modest ranch house on the other side of town. Joan Fuller was in her 80s, with cloudy eyes that nonetheless seemed to see right through me when she opened her door. "I wondered when someone would come asking," she said, inviting me inside with a trembling hand. Her living room was filled with framed family photographs, weddings, graduations, holidays, normal milestones of a normal family. "Your sister and her husband," I began carefully. "Did they ever mention anything unusual about the house?" Joan's thin fingers twisted the fabric of her cardigan. Gerald was a collector, you might say. Alina never questioned his hobbies. "What did he collect?" I asked, though something cold had already settled in my stomach. "Moments," Joan whispered. "He said he collected perfect moments." It took 3 more visits to Joan before she finally showed me the box she had kept hidden since Alina's death. Inside were more photographs, dozens of them. People in various locations around town, most unaware they were being photographed. And then the companion images, the same people standing in front of the house on Maple Street, my house. The police detective assigned to my case listened patiently, his pen moving steadily across his notepad as I laid out the connections I had found. The photographs were now in evidence bags, my dining room table replaced by the cold metal surface of an interview room. "So you believe Gerald Chambers was what, serially abducting people and photographing them at his house?" he asked, his tone professionally neutral. "I believe the photographs suggest that, yes," I replied. "The 7 people in those images all went missing, and all were somehow brought to that house." "And then what?" the detective pressed gently. "Where are they now?" That question haunted the excavation of my backyard, the removal of sections of drywall, the careful examination of the crawlspace and attic. No remains were found, no evidence of violence, just more photographs hidden in various locations throughout the house, between walls, under floorboards, inside hollowed-out books on built-in shelves. "I haven't returned to live in the house. It stands empty now, a point of macabre interest in a town that had thought itself ordinary. The investigation continues, but with each passing month, the likelihood of answers diminishes. Sometimes I drive by, slowing as I pass the red door and bay window. In those moments, I wonder if someone is watching from inside, someone who knows where the missing 7 went, someone who understands what Gerald meant by collecting perfect moments. And sometimes, when I look in my rearview mirror, I imagine I can see Gerald Chambers himself, camera in hand, waiting for me to become part of his collection, another photograph hidden away for someone else to find. Story 9. I've always been drawn to the forgotten edges of family histories. There's something about old photographs, the way they capture not just faces, but moments suspended in time, fragments of lives lived. This is why I volunteered to clean out my grandmother's attic after she moved to assisted living, not out of obligation, but curiosity. The attic was a museum of dust and memories, boxes of Christmas ornaments, my mother's wedding dress, stacks of National Geographic magazines from the 1970s. The late afternoon light filtered through a small window, casting long shadows across the floorboards as I worked methodically through decades of accumulated possessions. It was in the 3rd hour of sorting when I found the photograph. A silver frame, tarnished at the edges, containing a family portrait labeled Thanksgiving 1989 in my grandmother's careful handwriting. I sat back on my heels, studying the faces, my parents looking young and hopeful, Uncle Robert with his signature mustache, Aunt Claire wearing that turquoise necklace she never took off, cousins I recognized, grandparents I remembered. And then a face I didn't know. He stood in the back row, slightly offset from the family grouping, tall with dark hair swept neatly to the side. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore a charcoal sweater and held what appeared to be a glass of wine. Something about his posture suggested both belonging and separation, as if he had been invited but wasn't quite comfortable. I brushed my finger across the dusty glass. Who was he? A family friend, a distant relative. I'd never seen him in any other photographs. The peculiar thing was I recognized him, not from memory, but from yesterday. The same man, older now, his dark hair threaded with silver, had knocked on my door. He'd called me by name, asked if I was Margaret Wilson's granddaughter. When I confirmed, he'd simply nodded, saying he'd come back another time. He'd walked away before I could ask any questions. I carried the photograph downstairs and called my mother. "Who's the man in the back row of the Thanksgiving picture? The one in the dark sweater?" The silence that followed lasted too long to be casual. "What picture are you talking about, honey?" Her voice held a forced lightness. "The silver-framed one from Grandma's attic, Thanksgiving 1989. There shouldn't be any man in a dark sweater." Her words came slowly, measured. It was just family that year. I looked again at the photograph. He was still there, watching me through 35 years of distance. "Mom, he came to my house yesterday." The sound of something dropping, glass breaking. "Stay where you are, I'm coming over." My mother arrived 40 minutes later, her face pale as she studied the photograph I'd propped on the coffee table. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "Who is he?" She sank onto the couch. His name was Daniel Hayward. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. I waited as she gathered her thoughts. "He worked with your grandfather at the university, a research assistant, brilliant but intense. He became obsessed with your grandmother, started showing up uninvited to family functions, sending letters." Her fingers tapped nervously against her knee. "After that Thanksgiving, your grandfather reported him. The university issued a restraining order." "What happened to him?" "He disappeared. We assumed he'd moved away, started over somewhere else." I described the man who had come to my door. With each detail, my mother's face grew more troubled. "That's impossible," she finally said. "Daniel Hayward died in 1992, car accident." The air in the room seemed to thicken. "Maybe it's a relative of his," I suggested, "or someone who looks similar." "Maybe," she didn't sound convinced, "but how would he know who you are, where you live?" That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the man in the photograph, the way he stood slightly apart from everyone else, the way his eyes seemed to look directly at the camera while everyone else was focused on each other. I got up and turned on my laptop. The university archives might have something. My grandfather had been a respected professor. Perhaps there would be records of his research assistants. 3 hours into my search, I found an article from the university newspaper dated March 1990. Professor Wilson, an assistant, awarded grant for quantum theory research. There was a small photograph, my grandfather and Daniel Hayward standing in front of a chalkboard covered with equations. It was definitely the same man from the family photograph, from my doorstep. I dug deeper, found his obituary from June 1992, promising physicist killed in single vehicle accident. no surviving family listed. Something about this wasn't adding up. I printed the article and obituary, then spent another hour searching social media and public records for anyone who might be related to Daniel Hayward. Nothing matched. Outside, rain began to tap against my windows. 3 in the morning, and I was chasing ghosts. The knock came at my door the next afternoon. I peered through the peephole. It was him. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slid the chain into place and opened the door a few inches. Ms. Wilson, his voice was soft, educated. I apologize for my abrupt visit yesterday. May I come in? There's something I need to discuss with you. Who are you? I kept my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Daniel Hayward, I worked with your grandfather. Daniel Hayward died in 1992. A flicker of something, amusement, crossed his face. Did he? Interesting. What do you want? Your grandfather and I were working on something important before we lost touch. I believe he left some research materials with your grandmother for safekeeping. Notes, a journal, possibly. Why come looking for them now, after all this time? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, just like in the photograph. Time is a curious thing, Ms. Wilson. Sometimes it takes decades for the right moment to arrive. I didn't open the door wider. I haven't found any research materials. Keep looking. He slipped a business card through the gap in the door. Plain white with just a phone number, no name. Call me when you do. I watched through the window as he walked away, disappearing around the corner without looking back. I returned to my grandmother's house the next day, determined to search more thoroughly. The attic yielded nothing beyond the usual family artifacts. I moved to my grandfather's study, untouched since his death 5 years ago. The bookshelves contained academic texts, literary classics, family photographs, nothing unusual. It was the desk, a heavy oak piece with numerous drawers, that finally offered something. A false bottom in the lowest drawer, revealed when I pulled it out completely by accident. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with my grandfather's neat handwriting and complex equations I couldn't begin to understand. One phrase appeared repeatedly throughout: temporal displacement theory. Tucked inside the back cover was a smaller photograph. My grandfather and Daniel Hayward in the lab. On the back, written in a hand that wasn't my grandfather's: "We did it, Richard, November 1989. The date of the Thanksgiving photograph. I took the journal home and stayed up all night trying to decipher its contents. Most of it was beyond my comprehension. Physics had never been my strong suit, but certain passages were underlined, seemingly for emphasis. If the equations are correct, displacement is theoretically possible, but with significant risks. D becoming increasingly fixated on practical applications, concerning. Ethical considerations not being properly addressed, must reconsider collaboration. The final entry, dated January 1990, project terminated. University notified, D not taking it well. Margaret suggests legal intervention if behavior continues. I sat back, rubbing my tired eyes. Whatever my grandfather and Daniel Hayward had been working on, it had ended badly. But what did it have to do with me? With the man who kept appearing, seemingly unchanged by the decades between then and now? The answer came 3 days later, when I finally gathered the courage to call the number on the business card. You found it, not a question. What is temporal displacement theory? I asked. The most important discovery of the century. Your grandfather lacked the vision to see it through. The journal says the project was terminated. Officially, yes, his voice remained calm, measured. Unofficially, I continued alone. What does this have to do with me? A pause, everything and nothing, Ms. Wilson. I need that journal to complete what we started. The Daniel Hayward in my grandmother's photo, the one who worked with my grandfather, died in 1992. Did he have that same amused tone, or did he simply displace? A chill ran down my spine. That's not possible. Bring me the journal and I'll explain everything. I hung up without answering. That night I dreamed of the family photograph. In my dream, everyone was frozen except Daniel Hayward, who stepped out of the frame and walked toward me, his hand extended. Time isn't linear, he said. It's a loop we keep traveling. I woke gasping, the journal clutched to my chest. I hadn't remembered bringing it to bed. In the pale morning light, I made my decision. I wouldn't contact him again. Whatever was in this journal, whatever my grandfather had been working on, it had troubled him enough to hide it away, to end a professional relationship, to seek legal protection. I would return the journal to its hiding place in my grandfather's desk and forget about Daniel Hayward, whether he was a ghost, an imposter, or something else entirely. As I drove to my grandmother's house, a car pulled alongside me at a stoplight. Daniel Hayward sat behind the wheel, watching me with those same distant eyes from the photograph. He nodded once, then drove away when the light changed. I've sealed the journal inside a lockbox now, hidden where I hope it won't be found. Sometimes I think about burning it, but something stops me. Perhaps the same curiosity that led me to clean out my grandmother's attic in the first place. The stranger from the family portrait hasn't returned to my door, not yet, but sometimes when I look at that photograph, which I've kept despite my better judgment, I notice small changes. In one viewing, he stands slightly closer to my grandmother. In another, his hand rests on my grandfather's shoulder. And in the most recent viewing, he seems to be looking not at the camera, but directly at me, across the impossible distance of decades, waiting for me to understand what my grandfather discovered, what he feared. Time isn't what we think it is, and sometimes the strangers in our family portraits are more familiar than we know. Story 10. The worn wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, a subtle movement that beckoned her curiosity. Stooping down, she traced her fingertips along the edges, sensing the hidden void beneath the seemingly solid floor. With cautious precision, she pried up the boards, unveiling a shadowy, cramped space beneath the house. At first glance, only dust and cobwebs greeted her eyes. But as they adjusted to the dimness, shapes emerged from the darkness: an old mattress, a solitary chair, and tucked away in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with pages bearing a singular name, her own. Detective Morgan Reed stood by Sarah Coleman's side as she peered into the abyss beneath her newly acquired dwelling. The fear flickering in Sarah's gaze hinted at a deeper disturbance than merely discovering a concealed chamber. It spoke of a violation of sanctuary, an intrusion of malevolence into what was meant to be her new beginning. "Don't disturb anything further," Detective Reed's voice rang out, a steady anchor in the unsettling silence. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast a beam that unveiled more of the hidden space, exposing walls plastered with surveillance photographs, snapshots of Sarah in her daily routines, oblivious to the watchful eyes that had stalked her every move. A shrine of obsession, carefully curated beneath her very feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly recluse named Walter Green, a man who had passed away leaving no trace of kin. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah's arrival, its listing touting it as charming and ripe for minor refurbishments. No mention was made of any peculiarities during inspections or negotiations. "I never met him, the former owner," Sarah murmured. "The neighbors mentioned he was a recluse. I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report indicated." As crime scene investigators streamed in, their equipment clattering against the wooden floor, they meticulously documented each detail, recovering the mattress, chair, and notebook from the hidden recesses. Forensic analysis later unveiled a plethora of fingerprints belonging solely to Walter Green scattered throughout the chamber. What unsettled the investigators most was the timeline they reconstructed. Through utility records and dated photos found within, it became apparent that Walter had been shadowing Sarah for a minimum of 3 years before his demise. He had shared her spaces, her routines, without her ever registering his presence. This level of fixation often progresses, the department psychologist remarked during a debriefing. It evolves from mere fantasy to meticulous planning. The hidden room suggests a preparation for something more direct. Detective Reed's inquiries took a twist when she interviewed a former colleague of Walter's from the local shopping center maintenance crew. The man appeared uneasy, toying with his wedding band as he hesitantly spoke. Walter spoke of her at times, said she reminded him of someone. "I thought it was harmless infatuation. I never imagined." "Did he ever discuss any intentions involving her?" Reed prodded. "Not outright plans, but he'd say this thing about how she belongs with me. I thought it was just rambling." Securing a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, untouched since his passing, led them to a key that unlocked a mysterious storage unit registered in his name. The metallic door groaned open, revealing a meticulously recreated replica of Sarah's former apartment, her furnishings, her decor meticulously duplicated. A mannequin, styled to mirror Sarah, sat at a replica desk, while a calendar marked a date 1 week following Walter's untimely demise. The encircled date bore a crimson hue, with a solitary word scrawled across it: "Together." It surfaced that Walter had been institutionalized in his youth due to an obsession with a teacher, diagnosed with erotomania, a fixation wherein the subject believes in a reciprocated love that doesn't exist. Released and seemingly reformed, he had led a quiet life until Sarah unwittingly reignited his dormant fixations. At the precinct, Reed laid out the evidence, detailing Walter's delusions of a destined union. In his mind, he believed they shared a unique bond, fated to be together. Could she have crossed paths with him unknowingly, triggering this fixation? A fellow detective queried. Reed shook her head, no trace. Sometimes these obsessions require but a fleeting gesture, a smile, prolonged eye contact. For someone with his history, that might have been enough. Sarah opted to sell the property, unable to shake the unease that clung to its walls. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the living room, enveloped in her own arms. "I can't shake the thought of what might have been if he hadn't passed away, if I hadn't noticed that loose floorboard. How long would I have dwelled here, unaware of his watchful eye, unaware of the hidden truths beneath my feet?" The case concluded posthumously, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, although the abduction itself never transpired. Sarah relocated, altering her routines, guarding her privacy more zealously. Detective Reed occasionally checked in, an unspoken acknowledgement of how narrowly Sarah had escaped becoming another statistic, another casualty. The cottage found new proprietors, oblivious to its checkered past. The secret chamber was sealed, the floorboards replaced. Life persisted. Yet for those privy to the veracity, the tale of the hidden room beneath the floor lingered, a haunting reminder of concealed perils, of phantoms who evade capture, and of innocents who skirt the precipice of their own demise. Story 11. The quaint costume shop was on the verge of closing its doors, its shelves lined with remnants of the past waiting to find new owners. Amidst the chaos of discounted items, a woman's hand reached out and plucked a mask from a forgotten corner. Its delicate features held an uncanny lifelikeness that sent a shiver down her spine. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated, his voice barely a whisper. "That's not ours." Puzzled, the woman checked for a tag, but there was none to be found. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take the mysterious mask home. That night, a soft rustle roused her from her slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting in the darkness. Her eyes flickered open to find the mask perched on her nightstand, its gaze fixated on her. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, was later discovered by her concerned neighbor. The front door creaked ajar, allowing the gentle morning light to spill into the shadowed interior. What awaited inside would etch itself into the minds of all who entered. Catherine lay unmoving on her bedroom floor, the enigmatic mask nowhere in sight. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, the click of the shutters providing a haunting rhythm to the atmosphere. As forensics meticulously documented the room, the detective's keen eyes absorbed every detail. A drawer slightly ajar, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand, everything seemed ordinary, except for the life extinguished before its time. The medical examiner's somber expression spoke volumes as he noted the lack of visible injuries or signs of a struggle. Pointing to Catherine's frozen expression of terror, he remarked, "Something frightened her to her very core." Catherine, a respected art appraiser known for her sharp eye for authenticity, had lived a quiet life. Her colleagues recounted her unmatched attention to detail, her ability to discern even the subtlest of discrepancies. The detective pondered whether this very talent had unwittingly led to her demise. Footage from the costume shop revealed a perplexing interaction. The cashier appeared genuinely bewildered by the mask, prompting a visit from the owner, who disavowed any knowledge of it. The detective's visit to the now empty shop uncovered a chilling revelation, a history of unexplained occurrences tied to items from a deceased collector's estate. A breakthrough emerged when forensic analysis uncovered peculiar fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips. These fibers, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance, hinted at a sinister connection. A pattern of similar deaths involving mysterious masks began to unfold, each victim sharing the same expression of unadulterated fear. Retired detective insights shed light on an ancient ritual of soul transference linked to the masks. Inside each mask lay inscriptions of arcane symbols, a harbinger of the darkness that followed their acquisition. A hidden journal within Catherine's apartment unearthed her descent into paranoia as she unraveled the mask's malevolent origins. Her frantic entries detailed a chilling realization the mask was sentient, seeking out those who recognized its true nature to serve as vessels for its insidious purpose. The cause of Catherine's demise was finally revealed as cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror. But what could evoke such overwhelming fear to still her heart in an instant? Surveillance footage unveiled a chilling revelation, a figure donning a mask akin to Catherine's departing her home, moving with an eerie mimicry of her gestures, hinting at a macabre possession. Despite efforts to trace the mask's whereabouts, it remained elusive until rumors surfaced of its reappearance in a distant vintage shop. By the time authorities intervened, it had vanished into the hands of an unknown buyer, leaving the mystery unresolved. The detective, haunted by Catherine's tale, safeguards her journal as a reminder of the lurking malevolence that transcends time. In the quiet of night, she startles awake, a sense of being observed lingering in the air. Securing her surroundings, she suppresses thoughts of the mask's inevitable return, perpetuating its cycle of dread and death across generations. The mask bides its time, waiting to ensnare another unwitting soul, its empty gaze fixated on the next host to perpetuate its insidious legacy. Story 12. The apartment had been vacant for what seemed like an eternity before the new tenants arrived. They didn't have high expectations as they stepped into the dusty space, anticipating perhaps some abandoned furniture or neglected corners. However, one door stubbornly refused to open. It was a closet, its secrets locked away from prying eyes. When the landlord finally managed to break the seal, the tenants braced themselves for a mundane discovery. Instead, what awaited them sent shivers down their spines. The walls bore witness to a haunting tale, deep, jagged scratches etched into the wood, a silent plea for freedom. And nestled in the shadows, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its screen ominously illuminated by a single unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator, had encountered her fair share of chilling crime scenes over the years. Yet this one stirred a different kind of unease within her. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unsettled her, but rather the silent screams echoed in those desperate scratch marks a poignant testament to someone's harrowing confinement. "We need forensics on site immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently documented the eerie markings, "and gather all the information on the previous tenants." The cryptic message on the phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually clammy hands, nervously recounted how the previous tenant had vanished suddenly, leaving behind unpaid rent. A young woman kept to herself, left about 6 months back, he divulged, his gaze skirting away from the closet. No trouble, really. Forensics uncovered a trail of blood within the scratches on the walls, with most samples tracing back to a single individual, presumed to be the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported as disappeared by her workplace. However, 2 DNA profiles stood out. One remained a mystery in the databases, while the other belonged to a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This doesn't add up," Shaw muttered, studying the perplexing findings. Derek Mercer, a convicted felon believed to have perished in a car crash, now left his genetic imprint on the closet walls. Emma's apartment whispered tales of interrupted existence, unopened mail, a lonely coffee mug in the sink, a meticulously made bed. Her call records hinted at a sudden silence in her communication, punctuated by numerous calls from an unidentified number prior to her vanishing. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured Emma's return to the building one fateful evening, trailed closely by a shadowy figure in a baseball cap, evading the camera's gaze. A breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints belonging to Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's interior doorknob. He staged his death, Shaw deduced, but why and what's his link to Emma? The unidentified DNA snippet led them to another missing persons case, Lynette Porter, who had disappeared years earlier. Strikingly, witnesses recalled a woman resembling Lynette frequenting Emma's residence. Shaw pieced together the puzzle through meticulous scrutiny of traffic cameras, tracing a car linked to Derek Mercer's family to the vicinity of Emma's apartment, with the driver matching his description. The investigation unraveled a sinister web, unveiling Lynette Porter confined in a remote property, emaciated and traumatized, echoing the harrowing ordeal Emma endured in that closet. "He forced me to witness," Lynette murmured, haunted eyes devoid of light. "Said I needed to learn the consequences of defiance." A trove of evidence surfaced. Journals detailing Mercer's fixation on dominance, snapshots of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and damning videos capturing Mercer's cruel machinations. "He believed she would expose us," his voice echoed in the recordings. "No one reveals my secrets." The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions, his chilling predilections sending shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. As authorities combed the land, forensic profilers painted a portrait of a man who thrived on inflicting suffering, relishing in the torment of confined souls. Mercer's capture at a bus terminal, armed with a new identity and a ticket to an undisclosed coastal destination, marked a pivotal moment in the pursuit of justice. In his possession, tools of coercion, a knife, and a chilling reminder of Emma's disappearance. During interrogation, Mercer exuded a disconcertingly composed demeanor. "She sent that message herself," he calmly asserted about the phone. "She craved discovery, but not salvation." The trial laid bare Mercer's intricate ruse to feign his demise, leveraging a homeless man's dental records to orchestrate his vanishing act. For years, he prowled in obscurity, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's remains were never recovered, the forensic traces hinting at a tragic demise within the confines of that unforgiving closet. The jury swiftly returned a verdict of guilt on all charges after a mere 4-hour deliberation. As the judge pronounced a life sentence devoid of reprieve, Mercer's faint smile hinted at a private comprehension known only to him. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter stood resolute before the court. "He locked us in darkness because that's where his soul resides, imprisoned in shadows. But as he withers in confinement, I shall bask in the light." The investigation reshaped protocols for missing persons cases, emphasizing the scrutiny of relational dynamics and rental properties. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment in her office, a poignant reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes often bear not the stains of blood, but the scars of a soul fighting for survival. Story 13. The gentle current whispered secrets as it flowed that tranquil morning, the water reflecting the sky like a polished mirror. The fisherman, his boat rocking ever so slightly, almost missed the sight of a lone suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, he thought it was merely a pile of discarded clothes left by careless wanderers. But as he ventured closer, a pungent odor enveloped him, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The case was ensnared in chains, its metal edges tinged with the telltale signs of exposure to the elements. When the authorities pried open the weathered case, it did not reveal a stack of old garments. Instead, it unveiled a haunting scene, a tangle of hair, fingers frozen in a silent plea. And nestled at the bottom, a cryptic note whispered, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, her brow furrowed in contemplation, gingerly pressed her handkerchief to her nose as she surveyed the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, her dark locks now matted and her once pale skin marked by the river's touch, lay silently on the shore. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail, a somber dance of final respects before the body was tenderly taken away. What struck Mercer amidst the sorrowful scene was not the brutal disposal of the victim, but the eerie care taken in preserving her appearance: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in garments of luxury. She was not left here, Mercer mused, her gaze fixed on the water's edge where nature met tragedy. She was readied, presented. The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her prowess in selling opulent properties. Divorced, childless, she resided alone in an affluent neighborhood, a solitary figure shrouded in ambition, perfection, and solitude. Her colleagues painted a picture of a woman driven by success, meticulous in her ways, yet veiled in secrecy. Catherine's assistant, her voice tinged with disbelief, recounted how she had raised the alarm when Catherine failed to show up for a crucial showing with esteemed clients. She would never miss such an opportunity, the assistant insisted, her loyalty unwavering. That deal could have been her greatest triumph. As investigators delved into Catherine's immaculate abode, a realm of pristine perfection greeted their probing eyes: designer furnishings arranged with precision, a realm devoid of dust. The refrigerator harbored neatly labeled meals, an array of identical containers waiting for their designated days. Her closet, a spectrum of hues and textures, stood in stark contrast to the anomaly found in her home office, a drawer slightly ajar, revealing a leather-bound journal. The final entry within its pages whispered of unseen eyes, of unrelenting vigilance. Digital breadcrumbs unearthed in Catherine's email unveiled a haunting pattern: messages from anonymous senders, each bearing the chilling phrase, "I see your perfection," dispatched like clockwork, unyielding in their eerie consistency. Her online searches hinted at a silent plea for protection, a quest for security amidst unseen threats. Detective Mercer, her mind a tapestry of enigmatic threads, wove the disparate clues together: the careful arrangement of the victim, the meticulous presentation. "Our culprit is no ordinary killer," she confided to her partner. "This was no crime of passion. This was a ritual, an act of calculated precision." The tide of revelation shifted when an unexpected informant emerged. A local pawnshop owner, a keeper of forgotten treasures, recognized Catherine's missing emerald necklace among his wares. The man who had pawned it bore a face of anonymity: Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker, a shadow in the tapestry of life. Surveillance footage painted a haunting image of Linden, a figure moving through the shadows of Catherine's existence, a specter haunting her steps in silent pursuit. As detectives breached the walls of Linden's modest dwelling, a chilling tableau unfurled before their eyes: walls adorned with stolen moments, stolen glances, stolen lives. Photographs of Catherine and other women, their visages frozen in time, adorned the walls, some marked with the damning stroke of crimson. Behind a hidden panel, a shrine emerged, a sanctuary of stolen fragments, a mosaic of lives intertwined in tragedy. The chilling silence of the interrogation room enveloped them as Linden, a figure of calm amidst the storm, faced the accusations leveled against him. "They were flawed," he intoned, his voice a monotone whisper. "They cloaked their imperfections in a veil of perfection, but I saw through their facade." Catherine's desk drawer in disarray, her lipstick a mark amiss, her perfection was a lie. The hunt for the missing pieces of Linden's puzzle led investigators to remote corners, where two more suitcases surfaced, each a sepulchre of echoes, each a vessel of sorrow. The victims within bore a striking resemblance to Catherine, all real estate agents who peddled perfection as their hallmark, a facade awaiting the sharp edge of reality. As the trial unfolded, Lyndon sat in stoic silence, a riddle yet unsolved, an enigma yet unfolded. His meticulous methods laid bare for all to see, a chilling testimony to a mind unhinged. He had stalked his prey with methodical precision, a voyeur of lives lived in the shadows, a puppeteer of fate. The families of the fallen, their hearts heavy with grief, bore witness as the gavel of justice fell, sealing Lyndon's fate a life behind bars, a future bereft of freedom. For Detective Mercer, the case found its closure in the cold halls of justice, yet questions lingered, whispers in the night. What drove Lyndon to these heinous acts? What specter of imperfection haunted his soul, driving him to seek solace in the shadows of others' lives? The river, ever flowing, carried with it the echoes of lost souls, the whispers of the departed. In the precinct upon Mercer's desk lay the chilling remnants of a haunting tale, a reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, darkness lurks, waiting to unfurl its wings. And in the quiet corners of the world, in the hearts of the seemingly ordinary, the shadows dance, waiting for the moment when perfection unravels, revealing the jagged edges of the human soul. Story 14. Once upon a time, there was a flicker, a mere glitch in the baby monitor's feed that caught the mother's attention. At first, she brushed it off as mere interference, a fleeting disturbance in the airwaves. But then the audio crackled, and a voice, soft and eerie, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill crept up her spine as her blood turned to ice in her veins. With a heart pounding like a drum, she dashed to her son's room, the panic rising within her. However, upon reaching the nursery, her worst fears were realized. The crib stood empty, the little one nowhere to be seen. The window remained closed, the door securely locked. The only oddity in the room was a stuffed rabbit, its glassy black eyes fixed upon her, seemingly holding a secret she couldn't comprehend. Rebecca's screams echoed through the house until her throat was left raw, her cries reaching the ears of concerned neighbors who promptly dialed for emergency help. When the authorities arrived, they found her on the nursery floor, clutching the stuffed rabbit tightly, rocking back and forth in a state of shock and disbelief. Her precious 4-month-old son, Samuel, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that seemed impossible to fill. The investigation that followed offered little solace or answers. There were no signs of forced entry. The security system remained intact and vigilant throughout the night. The baby monitor footage, previously innocent and mundane, now held a sinister secret, a mysterious voice and static that defied explanation, leaving investigators baffled and grasping at straws in the dark. As suspicions began to swirl, Rebecca found herself at the center of scrutiny. Her strained marriage to Daniel, who had been away on business during the disappearance, raised eyebrows. Medical records hinted at her struggles with postpartum depression, casting a shadow of doubt upon her every move. The detective's keen eye noted her unnervingly composed demeanor, a stark contrast to a mother whose child had just vanished into thin air. Just when the darkness seemed overwhelming, a glimmer of hope emerged. Forensic experts uncovered microscopic fibers on the nursery windowsill, fibers that did not belong to the household or its occupants. These fibers, belonging to a rare climbing rope, hinted at a skilled intruder gaining access from outside, a revelation that shifted the focus of the investigation away from Rebecca. Daniel's return from his business trip brought forth a new wave of suspicion. His hands betrayed unusual calluses, a detail that did not escape the notice of the investigators. His mention of rock climbing as a recent stress-relieving hobby raised eyebrows, especially when financial records unveiled a troubling pattern, a hefty life insurance policy on Samuel, mysterious calls to an unknown number, and a hidden second family in a different community. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place as security footage from neighboring homes revealed a shadowy figure lurking in the night, a footprint matching specialized boots, and a trail of encrypted messages detailing a sinister plan. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, now stood at the center of the storm, its hacked signal leading investigators to a chilling discovery in a secluded basement. There Samuel was found alive, in the care of a woman named Elaine, whose vacant eyes spoke of a deep-seated pain and longing. Elaine, it turned out, was Daniel's first wife, haunted by a past miscarriage and consumed by a desire for the child she believed was rightfully hers. The twisted web of lies and deceit spun by Daniel and Elaine unraveled under the harsh light of truth, revealing their nefarious plan to manipulate and deceive. As the courtroom hushed in anticipation, the enhanced audio from the baby monitor played, capturing not just the whispered voice that had haunted Rebecca, but also a familiar cough, a cough that placed Daniel at the scene of the crime he vehemently denied any part in. The jury's swift verdict condemned them both to the maximum penalties for their heinous crimes, while Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning far from the shadows of the past. The case served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the digital age, of the vulnerabilities that technology could expose in the most intimate of settings. Baby monitors across the nation were scrutinized, safeguards reinforced, and a newfound awareness of the perils of modern crimes took root. Samuel, blissfully unaware of the turmoil that had surrounded his infancy, grew up in the embrace of a mother determined to shield him from the darkness that once threatened their lives. And as for the stuffed rabbit, with its glassy black eyes and silent witness to the truth that unfolded that fateful night, it remained locked away in a box, a haunting reminder of a past best left undisturbed. The baby monitor, with its whispered secrets and chilling revelations, stood as a testament to the power of truth, even when shrouded in the depths of darkness. Story 15. The old Polaroid held secrets long forgotten, frozen smiles and flickering candles captured in time. Among the familiar faces, there lurked an unsettling presence, a man, a stranger, standing on the edge of the frame, always getting closer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the box of memories in her late mother's attic, a bittersweet find that would unravel a chilling mystery. The first photo barely hinted at his existence, a dark figure by the glass door during Sarah's childhood birthday party. In the subsequent images, he crept closer, blending into the shadows, unnoticed by the joyous gathering. Concerned, Sarah reached out to her father, only to be met with confusion and denial. Who was this man that haunted their family photos? Detective Marcus Reed took on the case, the rain tapping softly against the windows as Sarah laid out the eerie progression of photos before him. With each picture, the mysterious man inched closer to the children, his presence sending shivers down their spines. Reed's experienced eyes traced the figure's movements, a sense of unease settling in the room. Despite thorough investigations and interviews with party attendees, the man remained a ghost, a phantom from the past that no one could place. Facial recognition failed, leaving only the unsettling certainty that he had been there, watching, waiting. But Sarah's determination led to a breakthrough as she uncovered more photos with the same ominous figure lurking in the background. Enhanced details revealed a scar, a ring, a reflection clues that pointed to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a dark past. Keller's connection to unsolved child abductions sent shockwaves through the investigation, linking him to a string of long-forgotten tragedies. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, unveiling a sinister truth hidden in plain sight. Remains discovered near Keller's former home confirmed the horrors of the past, bringing closure to families who had long searched for answers. Sarah sat alone, the weight of the revelations heavy on her shoulders, the once comforting memories now tainted by the darkness that had lingered unseen for so long. As she packed away the incriminating photos, a sense of relief washed over her. The hidden figure had been unmasked, his sinister presence exposed to the light of justice. In the quiet of her apartment, she pondered the chilling truth that some dangers lurk in the shadows of the past, waiting to be discovered in the most unexpected places. The box of memories now held a different kind of significance, a reminder that even in moments of joy, unseen threats may lurk, leaving behind only a trace in the fading echoes of time. Story 16. In the hush of the night, a mysterious parcel arrived, nestled in a plain envelope devoid of any sender's mark. Within its confines lay a solitary brass key, weathered by the passage of time. The homeowner, a soul named Sarah Miller, could not place its origin, yet an eerie sense of recognition tugged at her thoughts. With a quiet resolve, she tested the key in every lock she possessed, only to find them unmoved by its touch. It did not belong to her. As she set it gently upon her coffee table, a relic of the past stirred. The old grandfather clock in the hallway emitted a solitary, haunting chime, its gears long silenced by the march of time. Bewildered by the inexplicable event, Sarah Miller sought the counsel of the authorities, her heart heavy with unease. What had begun as a simple anomaly unfurled into a web of intrigue that would cast a shadow over the tranquil suburban neighborhood. The initial responder, a skeptical officer, attempted to quell her apprehensions, attributing the key's arrival to a mere oversight. Yet Sarah, her intuition sharp as a dagger, insisted that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, unaware of the pivotal role it would soon play in a sprawling investigation. The mantle of inquiry fell upon Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen instinct honed by years of service in the Special Victims Unit. The brass key lay upon his desk, unassuming yet bearing an aura of disquiet. Scrutiny of Sarah's background revealed a life unblemished by criminal shadows, an erstwhile high school English teacher, a widow with children scattered across distant lands. Her financial records, communication logs, and digital footprint bore no trace of malfeasance. She appeared to be exactly who she professed, an unwitting recipient of a cryptic offering. The forensic team's diligent search for clues yielded naught but Sarah's own fingerprints upon the key. The envelope divulged no secrets, save for a nondescript postmark from a distant distribution hub. No DNA, no trace evidence to unravel the enigma. The key itself, a common Schlage model, weathered and aged, bore no unique markings save for the wear of time. A breakthrough materialized unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to match the key's distinctive notches against the department's database. A cold case from years past echoed the same pattern, a key tied to a storage unit where horrors unspeakable had been uncovered. Blood-stained carpets, tools of cutting, and images of unknown women had haunted the original investigation. The case had stalled, the perpetrator elusive, the victims silent in their absence. Diving into the dusty archives, Detective Harmon unearthed a past shrouded in darkness. The key had unlocked memories of a man long gone, Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's, now vanished without a trace. A substitute teacher with a shadowed past, his footsteps left a trail of questions and unease. The pieces began to align, painting a portrait of a man cloaked in mystery, a man who had lurked in plain sight, invisible to all but a chosen few. As the investigation delved deeper, Sarah's anxiety swelled, prompting her to fortify her sanctuary with new locks and vigilant eyes. The unsettling question lingered in the air: why her? Why this key? Detective Harmon, haunted by the puzzle unfolding before him, ordered a fresh exploration of the evidence, hoping to unearth the truth buried beneath layers of deceit. The tendrils of the past reached out from the shadows as DNA analysis led to a distant relative of the suspect, a faint connection that illuminated the path to Harold Jenkins. The manhunt intensified, tracing his steps through a labyrinth of false identities and transient dwellings. Jenkins, a ghost among the living, had meticulously erased his digital footprint, leaving behind only whispers of his presence. The heart of darkness lay hidden in a secluded cabin, a macabre chamber of secrets concealed beneath the floorboards. Rows of brass keys, each etched with a name and date, bore witness to unspeakable acts. 5 keys whispered of the women from the photographs, while 27 others hinted at a grim reality, a tapestry of lives extinguished by a predator's hand. The earth cried out in anguish as forensic teams unearthed the grim harvest of Jenkins' deeds, remains of the lost, voices silenced by the passage of time. Sarah, enveloped in a shroud of protection, watched as the manhunt unfolded, a nation holding its breath in dread anticipation. The press christened him the Keymaster, a moniker that echoed through the corridors of fear and despair. In the depths of the wilderness, a solitary figure emerged, a specter of dread captured in a fleeting image. Jenkins, the phantom of nightmares, eluded capture, his trail marked by shadows and echoes. The final reckoning came in a clash of wills, a confrontation steeped in tragedy and sorrow. As the sun set on the horizon, a lone figure stood upon the precipice of fate, a man haunted by his deeds, a man whose legacy would forever stain the fabric of time. In the silence of the tower, Jenkins met his end, leaving behind a testament of terror, a journal of horrors, a key to unlock the depths of his depravity. The echoes of his crimes reverberated through the land, a somber reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the veneer of normalcy. And in the stillness of the evidence locker, a collection of brass keys whispered of lives extinguished, each key a silent testament to the fragility of innocence, the weight of unspeakable truths. Story 17, The Realtor's Secret Basement. The listing from the realtor omitted any mention of a basement. The blueprints displayed no evidence of its existence. Yet when the family unearthed the hidden door beneath the old carpet, a sense of intrigue enveloped them. With a rusty handle that resisted their efforts, it took the combined strength of 3 to pry it open. As the door creaked ajar, a gust of stale air infused with the earthy aroma of dampness wafted out to greet them. Descending the steps into the darkness, they braced themselves for what lay beyond, expecting a storage space. However, they were met with an unexpected sight, a solitary chair illuminated by a swaying light bulb above it, and on the wall behind the chair hung a series of photographs depicting them. Photos captured surreptitiously from within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had settled into their new suburban abode during the bleak winter months, the early darkness casting shadows over the neighborhood's bare trees. The aged 2-story structure exuded character with its weathered siding and creaking floors, a charm the family had found appealing. Little did they anticipate the depth of history concealed within the house's walls, or the unsettling manner in which it would entwine with their present. Upon arriving at the property, Detective Sarah Connors and her partner were met with a chilling scene. The crime scene unit had already cordoned off the area with fluttering yellow tape at the behest of Mrs. Mercer, her voice trembling as she recounted the discovery beneath their very living room floor. "We must document everything before further exploration," Connors instructed, methodically donning latex gloves. The camera flashes pierced the darkness, illuminating the stairwell as the forensic team meticulously captured the eerie space. The wooden steps groaned underfoot as they descended into the compact basement, resembling the size of a standard bedroom, with its concrete walls painted a somber gray. In the center, a lone chair stood bolted to the floor beneath the harsh glow of the light bulb. Yet it was the wall adorned with 37 photographs that seized their attention, each image meticulously arranged in chronological order. Examining the timestamps on the prints, Connor's partner remarked, "These date back nearly 4 weeks. Look here, Mrs. Mercer asleep on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms." Despite an exhaustive investigation, no signs of forced entry were uncovered, no evidence of theft or vandalism. Their privacy had been violated, their sanctuary compromised. Forensic analysis revealed a myriad of fingerprints within the basement, predominantly belonging to previous owners of the property. A disconcerting pattern emerged as the house had changed hands multiple times in a decade, each family residing for a brief period before departing under mysterious circumstances. None had ever mentioned the existence of a basement. "We must interview every former owner," Connors instructed, poring over her notes. Delving further into the property's history, they unearthed alarming inconsistencies in the records, blueprints altered between sales, permits revoked, and inspection reports redacted. A breakthrough occurred during an interview with the contractor who had renovated the house years earlier. His complexion drained of color upon glimpsing the basement photos. "There was no such room," he vehemently denied, his hands trembling. "I stripped that place down to its foundation. No basement, no door, nothing beneath the living room floor but earth and concrete." Extracting data from a concealed memory card within the light fixture unveiled a trove of additional images capturing not only the Mercers but previous occupants in intimate moments. Children slumbering, parents bickering, daily routines documented by an unseen observer. The investigation took a macabre turn upon recovering audio recordings from a weatherproof box secreted in the basement. Conversations from the master bedroom, kitchen, and living room were meticulously preserved, hinting at a sophisticated surveillance operation woven throughout the house. "We must scrutinize every wall," Connors urged with a sense of urgency. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years." Beyond the wall of photographs, investigators stumbled upon a concealed passage leading to a monitoring station, a makeshift desk, a chair, a laptop linked to an array of wireless cameras, and a journal brimming with meticulous observations on each family that had occupied the house. Their routines, quirks, vulnerabilities meticulously chronicled. The handwriting bore a resemblance to the property's original builder, a man named Edward Kelvin, whose abrupt disappearance during the house's construction raised grave suspicions. The journal's final entries exuded a palpable paranoia, with phrases like "they never looked down" and "they never see me" recurring. The last page ominously declared, "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis confirmed the investigators' growing certainty Edward Kelvin had never truly departed from the house he crafted. He had retreated into its concealed recesses, constructing a clandestine labyrinth of observation points from which he monitored the unsuspecting families. After a 3-day manhunt, Kelvin was discovered nestled within a crawlspace amidst the second-floor chambers, his emaciated frame attuned to navigating the narrow passages he had meticulously engineered within the walls. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as if they were mere actors in his private drama, observed with the detached scrutiny of a scientist examining specimens. He professed to never intruding on their lives, merely observing, recording, and documenting. "They invited me in," he murmured softly to the investigators. "They signed the papers, they became mine." A psychological assessment diagnosed Kelvin with severe delusions, perceiving himself as a custodian of the house rather than an intruder. The families, in his skewed perception, were transient guests in what he considered his enduring domain. The Mercers, like their predecessors, abandoned their possessions, fleeing with only essential belongings in tow. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the full extent of Kelvin's surveillance network was unveiled: secret chambers accessible solely via crawlspaces, covert observation spots integrated into the house's framework, meticulously planned long before the foundation was laid. Upon the jury's verdict, Kelvin remained impassive, having withdrawn into the labyrinth of his psyche where he could traverse the house's passages unseen and unchallenged. The property was eventually razed, its ground exhumed and filled, yet for the families ensnared in Kelvin's elaborate web, the violation lingered. They were haunted not by what was taken from them, but by the realization of being unknowingly scrutinized, watched, listened to, documented within the very walls they relied upon for security. In moments of quiet introspection, they found themselves casting furtive glances at air vents, light fixtures, and the junctures where walls met ceilings, pondering whether they had ever been truly alone, or if an unseen presence had shadowed their every move. Story 18. The ancient box lay buried beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic of the old house, a relic of the past left behind by previous inhabitants. Amongst the faded Polaroids found inside, capturing moments of joy and family gatherings, one photograph stood out. It depicted a scene in the living room, familiar furniture but with unfamiliar faces. A family not hers smiled for the camera, unaware of the figure lurking in the shadows behind them. Rebecca's fingers trembled as she held the eerie image, a chill creeping up her spine. Descending the creaking wooden stairs with the photograph in hand, Rebecca felt the weight of the house pressing down on her. The once spacious rooms now felt suffocatingly empty since she had moved in 4 months ago. Placing the photo on the kitchen counter, she scrutinized it under the harsh fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and the family in the picture sent shivers down her spine. Detective Morgan arrived, clad in a worn leather jacket that hinted at a storied past. His sharp eyes scanned the photograph with a keen intensity, flipping it over to reveal a blank back. "What do you know about the Nelsons, the previous owners?" he inquired in his low, rumbling voice. Rebecca confessed her lack of knowledge about the family, explaining they had already relocated out of state. The investigation unfolded quietly as Detective Morgan delved into the history of the house's former occupants. The Nelsons had bought the property from the Crawfords, who, in turn, had taken over from the Mornos. A breakthrough came unexpectedly when a former mail carrier identified the family in the photo as the Sutherlands, who had vanished without a trace years ago. Forensic analysis dated the photograph to 15 years earlier, revealing details that hinted at a staged composition. However, the mysterious figure in the hallway remained a puzzle. Further inquiries unveiled a dark pattern of families disappearing after exactly 1 year of residing in the house, dating back years. The focus shifted to the basement, where chilling discoveries were made beneath layers of concrete. The missing families were unearthed, perfectly preserved, along with a camera that matched the one used to capture the haunting photographs found in the attic. The enigmatic figure in the shadows now had a name: Samuel Whitfield, the elusive architect of the house. As the investigation progressed, a hidden crawl space in the attic revealed Whitfield's disturbing journal, detailing his sinister observations of the families over the years. The final entry hinted at Rebecca's imminent peril, prompting her relocation under police protection. Haunted by mysterious phone calls and the ominous sound of a Polaroid camera, Rebecca found herself entwined in a web of dark secrets. The house, now a crime scene, stood silent and foreboding, its walls holding untold horrors. Samuel Whitfield's fate remained a mystery, leaving investigators to ponder whether he had met his demise or continued his sinister activities elsewhere. In the shadows, new photographs developed, capturing unsuspecting families in their homes, a chilling reminder that the past never truly rests. Those who dare seek the truth about the man in the photograph find themselves under his watchful gaze, a grim warning of the darkness that lurks within empty houses and forgotten memories. Story 19. Renovations always have a way of unraveling hidden mysteries. Among the dust and debris lie remnants of the past, forgotten treasures and discarded memories. Yet for Sarah and Michael, the uncovering of a letter beneath the floorboards of their newly acquired Victorian-era home was an unexpected twist in their renovation journey. The yellowed paper, delicately folded, bore a cryptic warning: "Don't trust the one who knocked." As the echo of 3 sharp raps reverberated through the empty rooms, a shiver ran down their spines. The couple, drawn to the house's charm and history, found themselves entangled in a web of intrigue they never anticipated. Detective Alina Reed arrived, her experienced hands carefully retrieving the aged note, already tainted by the curious touch of the homeowners. Sarah and Michael's recounting of the mysterious knocking stirred unease in Reed's gut. Background checks on the couple revealed no cause for suspicion, but the house itself held a darker narrative. Previously inhabited by the reclusive Hargrove family, the residence bore the weight of untold stories. Delving into the past, Reed uncovered a tale of financial desperation and hidden truths. Franklin Hargrove, a once respected teacher turned recluse, had fallen victim to gambling debts and the menacing presence of a shadowy figure known as the Collector. Margaret, his wife, lived in fear of the relentless 3 knocks that signaled the Collector's unwelcome visits. Forensic analysis and interviews painted a chilling picture of secrets buried beneath floorboards and within the hearts of those who once dwelled there. Margaret's sisters' whispered revelations hinted at a past fraught with fear and betrayal. The truth, as it often does, emerged from the shadows. Beneath the house, a grim discovery awaited a skeleton, its identity tied to a long-standing disappearance. Franklin's past sins, intertwined with the ruthless Collector's fate, came to light through meticulous investigation and Margaret's haunting diaries. The house stood as a silent witness to a tragedy of the past, its walls echoing with the whispers of the tormented souls who once called it home. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of such history, chose to part ways with the dwelling, leaving it to stand as a somber monument to a bygone era. Whispers of the house's dark legacy lingered in the town's gossip, tales of spectral knocks in the dead of night. Whether a trick of the wind or a remnant of unsettled spirits, the mystery endured, a reminder of the chilling words inscribed on the long-forgotten note: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Detective Reed's final report bore witness to the enigmatic nature of human tragedy, acknowledging that some stories defy complete unraveling, leaving behind a haunting sense of unfinished business in the quiet corridors of memory. Story 20. In the quiet depths of an abandoned house, a phone lay dormant on the dusty kitchen counter, its screen softly glowing in the dim light. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to this peculiar scene, where the air held a sense of mystery and unease. The phone itself seemed out of place, a relic from a bygone era in a place frozen in time. The call that had brought Morgan here echoed in her mind, a fleeting moment of static and whispers that defied explanation. A woman's voice, faint and frantic, had broken through the silence, uttering cryptic words that left a chill in their wake. "He's here," and then nothing but eerie silence. The property had once belonged to the Sullivans, a family now dispersed after a tragic fire had ravaged their home years ago. The house stood empty, untouched by human hands, yet the phone's call had shattered the stillness with its enigmatic message. As Morgan delved deeper into the mystery, she uncovered a tangled web of secrets and sorrows. The phone, registered to Catherine Sullivan, a woman long departed from this world, had somehow made a call from beyond the grave. The impossibility of it all weighed heavy on Morgan's mind as she grappled with the enigma before her. The evidence offered no solace, no easy answers. The forensic team's findings only deepened the mystery, revealing no fingerprints, no traces of intrusion. It was as if the phone had materialized out of thin air, a ghostly presence in the abandoned house. The whisper on the recording, those haunting 11 seconds of static and fear, held a power that defied logic. Voice analysis confirmed it to be Catherine Sullivan's voice, speaking from the past with an eerie certainty that sent shivers down Morgan's spine. Interviews with those who had known Catherine painted a portrait of a woman trapped in a web of deceit and danger. Her journal, a chronicle of her tumultuous relationship with a man named Mark, revealed a story of love turned to control, of fear and desperation in the face of unseen threats. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a chilling truth emerged from the shadows. Mark, the man at the center of Catherine's world, had harbored dark secrets and twisted desires. His crimes, hidden behind a facade of innocence, had come to light through the whispers of a ghostly phone call. The final confrontation with Mark, the revelation of his malevolent deeds, brought a sense of closure to the tangled tale that had ensnared so many lives. Justice, though long delayed, had finally found its mark, bringing a measure of peace to those left behind in the wake of tragedy. And so, as the phone from the abandoned house sat silent in its evidence locker, a symbol of a past that would not be forgotten, the whispers of the past lingered in the air. Catherine's story, a tale of darkness and light, of fear and courage, would echo through the halls of memory, a reminder that even in the silence of the night, voices can still be heard, speaking truths that refuse to be silenced. Story 21. The house lay dormant, untouched by life for an eternity, it seemed. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who vanished into thin air, leaving behind a void that echoed through the empty rooms. When the new occupants crossed its threshold, they were met with a peculiar sight of bedrooms sealed shut as if guarding a secret long forgotten. With a determined push, the door creaked open, revealing a world frozen in time. The air hung heavy with neglect, a tapestry of dust woven with memories long faded. Yet amidst the stillness, a sense of unease lingered, like a ghostly whisper brushing against the skin. The room bore witness to a strange tableau, the bed neatly made, the mirror reflecting emptiness, and a solitary candle, its flame extinguished long ago, weeping wax like tears frozen in time. And there upon the desk lay a notebook, its pages caressed by the ink of a forsaken pen. The final entry, etched in desperation, spoke of unseen eyes following her every move, of a darkness creeping closer with each passing moment. Detective Morgan delved into the secrets held within the notebook's pages, each word a breadcrumb leading deeper into the labyrinth of Elise Winter's disappearance. The room, a silent witness to her final moments, held the key to a mystery shrouded in shadows. As forensic technicians danced their delicate dance, seeking truths hidden in the whispers of dust, a tale of deception and betrayal unfurled before their eyes. Elise, a young paralegal with fire in her veins and a quest for justice burning in her soul, had stumbled upon a web of lies entwined with the threads of power and greed. Her meticulous nature, once an asset, now a curse that led her down a treacherous path lined with deceit. The room remained a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets that Elise had dared to unearth. The revelations within the hidden compartments of the room unveiled a sinister truth, a conspiracy woven by the hands of the powerful, a tapestry of corruption staining the fabric of justice. The flash drives whispered tales of manipulated data, of lives sacrificed at the altar of profit, of a darkness that lurked behind the facade of respectability. As the tendrils of truth snaked their way through the labyrinth of lies, the figure of Vincent Harriman emerged from the shadows, a puppet master pulling strings in the shadows. His hands tainted with blood, his soul blackened by the sins he sought to bury. The walls of justice closed in around him, their embrace cold and unforgiving. The room, once a sanctuary, now a prison of memories, bore witness to the unfolding drama of justice delayed but not denied. Elise's voice echoed in the stillness, a whisper of defiance that refused to be silenced. The truth, a beacon in the darkness, guided the hands of those determined to see justice served. The courtroom became a stage where the final act played out a symphony of truth and lies, of justice and betrayal. Elise's mother, a voice quivering with sorrow and pride, spoke of a daughter lost but never forgotten, of a legacy of courage that transcended the confines of mortality. And so the house stood empty once more, a monument to the battles fought within its walls, a testament to the courage of one woman who dared to defy the darkness. The whispers of the past still lingered in the air, a reminder that justice, though delayed, would always find a way to prevail. And in the quiet of the night, a light flickered in the upstairs window, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in shadows. Story 22. The worn envelope, its edges tinged with age, bore a fresh stamp as if time had skipped a beat. With cautious hands, the detective unfolded its contents. A single sheet of paper lay within, its message hastily typed in an uneven script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying a metallic scent that lingered in the air. A peculiar reddish smear along the bottom edge caught their attention. It was not ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, with meticulous precision, secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved fingers expertly handling it. The forensic team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved murder case that had haunted the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been found in her apartment, a tragic mosaic of stab wounds marking her final moments. Her laptop missing, notes strewn about, hinting at a link to the unfinished story she had been pursuing. Despite tireless efforts and countless dead ends, the case had remained cold until this cryptic letter arrived at the precinct, simply addressed to Homicide Division. Barely any fingerprints graced the paper and envelope, only faint smudges indicating a careful sender, perhaps one who wore gloves. The postmark provided a glimmer of hope, a thread to follow. Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, walls adorned with the haunting visuals of crime scenes and failed leads. She affixed the image of the letter at the heart of the board, a silent challenge to the darkness that shrouded the case. "This changes everything," she declared to the room. "Our perpetrator carries the burden of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit, scrutinized the letter. "Or wishes us to believe so," he countered softly. The blood may be a theatrical ploy, a twisted game of cat and mouse. The unique typewriter impression led the forensic team down a path to a bygone era, a model long forgotten but not beyond reach. They scoured antique shops and collections across the region, seeking a match. As the investigation unfolded, they delved into Rebecca's world. Her editor painted a portrait of a fearless soul, unyielding in her quest to unearth corruption's hidden face. Her latest assignment had delved into a family tangled in wealth and power, secrets lurking beneath the surface. The siblings' shadows danced with accusations, their inheritance a poisoned chalice of discord. Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, once a pillar of strength, now bore the weight of unspoken truths. She spoke of a shadow following her, he confessed, eyes clouded with regret. I dismissed her fears as paranoia, a fatal mistake. As the detectives pursued this lead, a second letter materialized, bearing the same hallmarks of mystery, the vintage typewriter, the haunting blood stain. This time the message unraveled a tale of secrets. She unraveled the family's tapestry, its dark heart, its buried sins. It was never meant to end this way. The threads of the investigation led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where Richard, the eldest son, stood in the spotlight of suspicion. His antique collection whispered of hidden truths, of stories etched in ink and blood. His rehearsed explanations echoed hollow in the dim-lit room. The breakthrough arrived with microscopic fibers on the envelopes, linking them to custom stationery belonging to Eleanor, the youngest daughter. Her revelation unveiled Richard's deceit, his manipulation of her belongings for a sinister purpose. A warrant uncovered a hidden chamber in Richard's abode, a shrine to Rebecca's demise, clippings, surveillance, and the damning typewriter. The blood spoke the truth of Rebecca's final struggle. The unexpected revelation came with the entwined destinies of Richard and Michael, a financial dance leading to Rebecca's untimely end. Michael's confession unraveled a web of lies, a tale of betrayal and misguided loyalty. I only sought to scare her off, he wept, the weight of guilt crushing his resolve. Eleanor emerged as the unexpected harbinger of justice, a recording sealing Richard's fate. His chilling words echoed in the courtroom, "Silence her forever." Richard's flight ended in arrest, the web of deceit finally unraveled. The courtroom drama unfolded, a tapestry of truth and lies intertwining. Richard's protestations of innocence crumbled beneath the weight of evidence. The jury's swift verdict echoed through the chamber, sealing his fate. As Richard faced his reckoning, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. The blood-stained letters, silent witnesses to a tragedy, stood as a testament to the fragility of deception. The case of Rebecca Warren, a cautionary tale whispered in the halls of justice, a reminder that even in the darkest night, a flicker of truth can pierce the shadows, unraveling the tapestry of deceit. Story 23. In the heart of the city, there stood a quaint coffee shop that held secrets beyond imagination. For years, a mysterious man frequented this establishment, his presence as familiar as the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Each day, he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and immerse himself in a world of silent contemplation. The barista recognized his face, but his identity remained shrouded in mystery, hidden behind a veil of anonymity. No one knew his name. He was simply known as the enigmatic stranger who graced the coffee shop with his silent presence. Then one fateful day, the routine was shattered. The man failed to appear, leaving behind a wallet that held more questions than answers. Inside the wallet, a driver's license bore a photo but lacked any other identifying information, no name, no address, just a blank void where his identity should have resided. Detective Sarah Mercer found herself drawn into the perplexing case of the man known only as John Doe. As she delved into the investigation, she uncovered a series of baffling events that defied all logic and reason. Upon reviewing the security footage from the coffee shop, Mercer was confronted with an impossible truth. The footage showed John entering the shop, taking his usual seat, and then inexplicably vanishing into thin air. No trace of his departure could be found, no explanation for his sudden disappearance. Determined to unravel the mystery, Mercer delved deeper into the enigma of John Doe. The wallet, with its blank spaces and untraceable credit cards, offered no clues to his true identity. A cryptic business card with a ghostly phone number only added to the intrigue. The notebook left behind by John contained pages of cryptic symbols and mysterious drawings that defied interpretation. As Mercer pored over the perplexing contents, she realized that she was on the brink of uncovering something far beyond her understanding. The investigation led Mercer to a discovery that sent shivers down her spine. Hidden behind an antique mirror in the coffee shop, a secret compartment was revealed, containing a trove of identical wallets and a journal filled with entries dating back decades, all in the handwriting of John Doe. The journal spoke of experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, of crossing between realities through a mystical gateway. Mercer was confronted with the chilling realization that John Doe may have been more than a mere mortal. He was a being caught between worlds, a traveler lost in the fabric of time and space. As Mercer delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding John Doe, strange occurrences began to manifest around the coffee shop. Reflections moved of their own accord, sightings of the elusive figure became commonplace, and reality itself seemed to warp and shift in inexplicable ways. The truth of John Doe's identity began to emerge when an elderly woman, Margaret Keller, revealed that he was, in fact, Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Weston's experiments with quantum mirrors and parallel realities had led him to a fate beyond comprehension. Mercer's investigation culminated in a revelation that transcended the boundaries of known reality. Through the shattered remnants of the antique mirror, she glimpsed a world where two versions of Daniel Weston coexisted, locked in a timeless struggle between existence and oblivion. And as the final note left behind by Weston foretold the closing of the window between worlds, Mercer was left to ponder the enigma of the man who didn't exist, a spectral figure lost to the annals of time, a mystery that would haunt her for eternity. The coffee shop, a sanctuary of secrets and shadows, closed its doors, leaving behind whispers of a world unseen. Daniel Weston's fate remained a riddle, his essence scattered across dimensions unknown. And as the echoes of the enigmatic tale faded into the night, Detective Mercer's own journey continued, her path intertwined with the enigmatic legacy of the man who defied reality itself. Story 24. The tale of the new homeowners unraveled like a delicate thread woven with mystery. The old Victorian manor stood stoic, surrounded by ancient oak trees whispering secrets of the past. Daniel and Meredith Parker stepped into this historical abode, drawn by its charm and the promise of a bygone era. The crackling intercom system, a relic of forgotten times, seemed to hold more than just static in its wires. Late at night, when the world fell silent, whispers danced through the speakers like ghostly echoes. The Parkers brushed it off as a quirk, a curiosity of the old house. But one fateful night, curiosity got the better of Daniel. His hand trembled as he pressed the button, expecting only silence. Instead, a voice, soft and haunting, murmured, "Why did you come back?" His heart skipped a beat, his wife's denial ringing in his ears. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. The call had hinted at a break-in, but the atmosphere was thick with something more ominous. Daniel's ashen face told a tale of dread as he led the detective through the dimly lit halls. The mystery deepened as Meredith revealed a hidden journal, its pages yellowed with age and filled with the frantic script of Eleanor Blackwood. Her words painted a picture of fear and suspicion towards her husband Vincent decades ago. The truth, buried beneath layers of deceit and concrete, slowly unraveled. Eleanor's remains, a silent witness to the horrors of the past, spoke volumes through forensic analysis. Vincent Blackwood's carefully crafted facade crumbled under the weight of justice as he confessed to the chilling truth. The house, a silent observer to the tragedy, bore witness to Eleanor's long overdue justice. Daniel and Meredith, unable to shake the shadows of the past, bid farewell to the manor, leaving behind a legacy of whispers and echoes. As Detective Reeves closed the case file, she felt a shiver of recognition. The house itself had spoken, its walls echoing the cries of the long silenced. The wind carried whispers of a restless spirit finally finding peace. And so the house that answered back stood silent once more, its secrets buried in the depths of time. Detective Reeves, driving past the property, felt a pang of nostalgia for the mysteries that once haunted its halls. The whispers faded into the night, a gentle lullaby of closure and redemption. Story 25. In the dimly lit attic of the old Victorian house, they stumbled upon a hidden treasure beneath a worn-out blanket. It was a porcelain doll, its fragile features showcasing faded elegance, with eyes as blue as the sky, wide and unwavering. Sarah and Michael, the young couple who had recently acquired the house, shared a chuckle at the discovery, dismissing it as just another forgotten relic of the past. As night descended and they retired to bed, a strange sensation enveloped the air around them. The silence grew thick, almost tangible, casting a veil of unease over the room. And when the morning light filtered through the windows, the doll was no longer in the attic. It now sat ominously at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel in the shadows. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the house's intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure when they purchased it at auction, unaware of the dark whispers that swirled around its history. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was summoned to the scene on a crisp autumn morning where a chilling tableau awaited her. In the master bedroom, the lifeless form of a woman lay contorted in an unnatural pose, her eyes wide with terror, a silent scream frozen on her face. Nearby in the hallway, the male victim seemed to have met a desperate fate, as if fleeing an unseen terror. The crime scene was pristine, devoid of any signs of forced entry or struggle, save for the haunting stillness that lingered. Detective Winters, her voice barely above a whisper, meticulously documented every detail, noting the deliberate arrangement of the victims reminiscent of dolls carefully posed in a macabre display. The investigation unfolded with a series of unsettling accounts from neighbors, each narrative weaving a tapestry of dread around the house and its tragic occupants. Forensic experts combed through the residence, uncovering traces of antique fabrics intertwined with the very essence of the home. Microscopic fibers, akin to those used in vintage doll clothing, clustered around the victims and the attic, hinting at a spectral presence that defied conventional explanation. Delving into the property's shadowed past, Detective Winters unearthed a chilling pattern of inexplicable death spanning decades. Each tragedy bore the hallmarks of eerie occurrences, antique toys appearing mysteriously, phantom footsteps echoing in empty halls, a legacy of fear that seemed to seep from the very walls of the house. A faded newspaper clipping led the detective to a dark chapter in the house's history, where a troubled doll-maker had crafted a sinister replica of his deceased daughter, rumored to be infused with otherworldly forces. As the investigation unraveled, a connection emerged between the victims and their ill-fated attempts to renovate the attic, a space steeped in malevolent energies. In a hidden alcove, forgotten photographs revealed the doll-maker's haunting creations, with one doll bearing an uncanny resemblance to the porcelain figure that had materialized in Sarah and Michael's home. Infrared scans exposed spectral handprints and a mysterious residue, bridging the gap between the living and the supernatural. A revelation from a distant relative shed light on the dollmaker's arcane practices, hinting at a dark pact that bound souls to inanimate forms, bestowing a twisted semblance of life upon the dolls. The investigation veered into uncharted territory, where reality blurred with the whispers of the past, leaving more questions than answers in its wake. As the case grew colder, Detective Winters found herself ensnared in a web of inexplicable events, culminating in the vanishing of the doll from police custody and her own bewildering lapse of memory. The house, tainted by tragedy, changed hands once more, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and silence. The new owners, wary of the house's grim legacy, chose to leave the attic undisturbed, a silent tribute to the mysteries that lay hidden within its walls. Yet on nights shrouded in hushed whispers, whispers of a child's laughter and fleeting shadows dancing behind attic windows, a reminder of a past that refused to be forgotten. Story 26. The village held its secrets close, whispering rumors of the house looming at the edge of the woods. It stood silent and forgotten, its windows veiled in darkness, its porch burdened by the weight of forgotten years. No one dared claim ownership of the mysterious structure. Its origins were lost to time, fading into the shadows of memory. But when a group of adventurous hikers strayed too near, they stumbled upon a chilling discovery, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like ominous prophecies. And among them, at the very bottom, a fresh name gleamed, untouched by age or weathering, a name unknown to the intrepid explorers until one of them gasped, trembling, "That's mine." In the dead of night, a call pierced the silence, the crackling voice of Mason Wright recounting his eerie encounter with the abandoned house. The authorities dismissed it as a routine trespassing incident, expecting nothing more than a juvenile prank or a mischievous escapade among friends, but what awaited them defied all logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as the shadows deepened, her flashlight cutting through the obscurity, revealing the weathered facade of the enigmatic dwelling. The names of 27 souls adorned the eastern wall, some barely discernible, faded by time, while others remained sharp and distinct as if freshly engraved. And at the very bottom, the name Mason Wright stood out, the carving still carrying the scent of newly sawn wood. "I've never set foot in this place before," Mason declared, his breath forming frosty clouds in the chilly air. "I can't fathom how my name found its way here." The investigation commenced with thorough background checks on each name inscribed on the walls. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to a person reported missing over the span of 4 decades, each tale shrouded in mystery and tragedy. Some cases had grown cold with time, while others remained open, haunting reminders of vanished souls who had ventured into the woods alone. Forensic experts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the intricacies of each inscription, the depths, the techniques, the patterns of wear. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance 37 years past, a young woman who had ventured into the forest and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a babbling stream. Despite extensive questioning, Mason's recounting of events remained unwavering. He professed no ties to the area beyond the ill-fated hiking excursion with his college comrades. They had chosen the trail at random, guided solely by an online suggestion. His background bore no connections to the other names adorning the mysterious house. Attention shifted to Mason's companions, particularly Emily Chen, the group's designated photographer, whose snapshots held a chilling revelation. In the background of several images, a blurred figure lurked, a tall, slender silhouette partially obscured by the forest foliage. "We never encountered anyone else on our hike," Emily asserted. "We would have remembered such an encounter." Detective Keller authorized a search of the interior of the desolate house. While the upper levels lay abandoned and forlorn, the basement concealed a disturbing secret. Personal effects of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each item bearing a name corresponding to those on the exterior wall. Bloodstains, concealed but revealed under ultraviolet light, hinted at dark deeds long since hidden, with cadaver dogs detecting ominous signs beneath the dense forest growth behind the property. As the investigation delved deeper, Mason's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He spoke of haunting whispers outside his residence, of enigmatic footprints leading to his door but vanishing into oblivion, of shadowy figures lurking in the dimly lit streets. Protective measures were taken, yet Mason's paranoia escalated, casting a pall of unease over the unfolding events. A breakthrough emerged with the unearthing of long-buried land records in the county archives, linking the house to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Tales of the elusive figure, tall and gaunt, circulated among the few neighbors who had glimpsed him fleetingly, always shying away from interaction. Blackwood's disappearance 15 years prior had never been probed, his vanishing relegated to the realm of local lore. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller led an expedition deeper into the encompassing forest, unveiling a network of primitive hunting blinds strategically placed along the well-trodden paths. Within one such blind lay a diary, detailing chilling observations, hikers' habits, routes, equipment, viewed through the lens of a predator. The entries progressed from animal hunting tactics to a harrowing account of human prey selection, culminating in elaborate narratives of stalking the victims whose names adorn the haunted house. A manhunt ensued, spanning multiple jurisdictions, with helicopters scouring the woods using thermal imaging and tactical squads combing every crevice and cavern. Yet the elusive Blackwood remained a specter, evading capture at every turn. Mason's whereabouts became a mystery as he withdrew from contact, his apartment deserted, save for a cryptic message freshly inscribed on his bedroom wall: "The hunter becomes the hunted." Weeks turned into a fruitless search for Mason, until a chilling revelation unfolded during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's abode. Concealed behind a false panel in the basement lay a macabre workshop, housing woodworking implements, preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden plaque bearing a new name not yet affixed to the external wall. The name struck a chord of recognition within Detective Keller. It belonged to the lead forensic examiner who had scrutinized the house during the initial inquiry, now inexplicably absent, unreachable by conventional means. A vigilant watch encircled the premises, surveillance systems primed to capture any intrusion. 3 nights hence, sensors blared a warning, footage capturing a spectral figure emerging from the shadows, impossibly tall, unnaturally slender, moving with an unearthly grace. Tactical units closed in, only for the cameras to briefly falter, losing sight of the enigmatic intruder. When visibility was restored, the figure had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a miasma of dread and uncertainty. To this day, the forsaken house remains under constant vigil, a silent sentinel guarding its enigmatic secrets. Mason Wright and the missing forensic technician remain elusive, their fates entwined with the enigma of the haunted dwelling. The investigation persists, drawing upon fresh resources as reports of similar vanishings surface in distant wooded enclaves. The names etched upon the walls have become a chilling legend among law enforcement circles, a taboo subject that some officers dare not utter, while others steer clear of the ominous case altogether. And local adventurers now skirt the house's periphery, fearful that a mere mention might consign their names to the grim roster of the unspoken, the names that echo in the shadows, lost to the whispers of the night. Story 27. The apartment exuded an air of ancient secrets, its time-worn walls holding whispered tales of days long past. The heating system groaned like a tired old soul. The pipes rattled with a haunting melody. It was all part of the building's ancient symphony, or so she thought, until that fateful night when the veil between reality and the unknown began to thin. A voice, barely a whisper, traveled through the labyrinthine vents, reaching out like a ghostly hand. It wasn't the distant chatter of neighbors or the echoes of the city outside. It was a calling, a beckoning that sent shivers down her spine. Pressing her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart drummed a fearful rhythm in her chest. A rush of icy air brushed against her skin, and then almost teasingly came the words, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself in the heart of the apartment, a silent witness to the enigmatic scene unfolding before her. The vacant space held echoes of a life interrupted, a story left unfinished. The forensics team moved with precision, capturing every detail with their flashing cameras as if trying to freeze time itself. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished into the shadows of the building, her absence unnoticed until the scent of decay betrayed her presence. 7 days had slipped by, each one a silent accomplice to her disappearance. Officer Patel, with his steady voice, recounted Alina's fear of the unseen, her desperate attempts to make the world listen to the whispers that haunted her. Kneeling by the vent, Shaw traced the marks of desperation etched into the metal, a silent testament to a struggle unseen. Fingernails clawed at the edges, a futile attempt to escape a fate sealed within the walls. The truth lay buried in the darkness, waiting to be unveiled. Alina, a beacon of warmth and kindness, had unknowingly drawn the attention of a predator lurking in the shadows. Her life, a tapestry of simple joys and quiet moments, had been torn asunder by forces beyond her control. The pieces of her existence, scattered like fallen leaves, whispered of a life interrupted, a soul lost in the maze of whispers. The whispers, oh the whispers, they echoed through the halls of the building, carrying tales of lives intertwined and destinies entwined. Shaw delved deeper, peeling back the layers of deceit and darkness that clung to the walls like a second skin. Each revelation brought her closer to the truth, a truth that chilled her to the core. The recordings, unearthed from Alina's phone, painted a portrait of a haunting reality. Shaw listened in solitude, the sound of rain a somber backdrop to Alina's trembling voice, reaching out into the void, searching for a flicker of truth amidst the shadows. The building, a silent witness to the horrors that unfolded within its walls, held secrets long buried. Tenants came and went, their lives entwined with the whispers that danced through the vents like phantoms in the night. Harold Weber, the keeper of keys and secrets, stood at the center of it all, his calm facade masking a darkness that Shaw could sense but not name. The hidden passage, a gateway to the unknown, revealed a truth more chilling than Shaw could have imagined. A life lived in the shadows, a presence unseen but felt in every whispered breath that caressed the walls. Weber's meticulous records, a testament to his obsession, his twisted dance with the souls he had claimed as his own. The trial, a stage for the unveiling of horrors long buried, held Shaw in its grip, a witness to the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of the mundane. Weber's words, a chilling reminder of the power he wielded, echoed through the courtroom, a final act in a play of shadows and whispers. As the building stood silent and empty, its walls holding the echoes of a past best forgotten, Shaw knew that the whispers would never truly fade. The memories of lives lost, of souls claimed by a darkness unseen, would linger like a haunting melody, a reminder of the fragile boundary between reality and the unknown. And so the apartment building stood, a silent sentinel to the whispers that danced through its halls, a testament to the darkness that lurked within its walls.